Welcome to day 2 of Childhood Disability Without Poverty, a national discussion. My name is Amanda Lockett. I'm just going to make sure I'm unmuted. I am. Great. I am one of the co-conveners of this conference and a member of the BC team of Disability Without Poverty. I am speaking to you from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I want to particularly thank Kirsten Dumont for opening our conference yesterday with such beautiful, courageous, and important words. And I also wanted to thank all the speakers and panelists who joined us yesterday. Before we begin the conference, I'm just going to go over through some accessibility components. Note that during the presentations and panel discussions, we'll have the chat closed to the public as it can be really disruptive to other participants. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, you'll be able to send a chat message to the host and panelists. And for any questions that you have, put those in the chat box as well. If you have comments that are coming up, we really greatly encourage you to share your questions and comments. Our meeting features simultaneous English and French translation, LSQ and ASL interpretation, English and French captioning. So please take a moment to adjust your settings as appropriate. First, please select your preferred language, English or French. You do this by selecting the interpretation option on your Zoom menu. Once you select this option, you will not need to change the language settings again during the presentation. You must select a language, even if you want to hear the presentation in English. If you're using a mobile device, such as a phone or a tablet, you can find language interpretation options under More. For those who require ASL or LSQ interpretation, we will be spotlighting those components throughout the presentation. So please make sure that your meeting view is speaker view so that you will always see these on your screen. To enable captions, select the captions option on your Zoom menu. If you'd like to adjust the size and placement of these captions, you'll need to go into your Zoom accessibility settings. For those of you who would like to access French captions for the event today, or would like to access the English captions on a different browser, please click the link that has been put into the chat event box and to access these options. If we can support you throughout this presentation, please send us a message in the chat and someone will assist you. For any additional settings, please go to your personal Zoom account settings or your audio settings for more customization. To summarize, select your language using the interpretation option, enable captions if required, and finally, please make sure to share your questions and comments in the chat. Our team are on hand to help you with any technical difficulties you may be experiencing. And if you feel comfortable, please put your camera on so that we can see your beautiful face this morning. We will be recording today's session in the speaker view, and as I mentioned yesterday, this conference became quite a bit bigger than we initially dreamed, so we have muted all the guests. Use that chat function. As I keep saying, we'll be doing some Menti polls throughout that will be explained in a little bit, and you can view all of the speaker bios and schedule on our website, which is linked in the chat. We would like to share in the Zoom chat now. If you'd like to, say hello, tell us where you're from, get in the practice of commenting and saying hi so that we can continue to participate throughout the day. My co-convener, Brenda Lenehan, and myself, thank you so much for joining us again as we learn from medical clinicians, policy experts, economists, service providers, researchers, and families. As we listen in, so to speak, to an informal gathering that places all of these people on equal footing in a discussion of childhood disability, family poverty, and health outcomes to see if we can instigate systemic change in federal, provincial, and local policy. We have tried to include speakers from coast to coast to coast who come from diverse cultures, genders, and socioeconomic backgrounds, and to find a balance of family voices, which include experts who wear multiple hats, including that of parent. We truly apologize to those we could not invite to speak today. This already grew far beyond our initial expectations. As we discovered yesterday, these panels do indeed go fast. There's not a lot of time to dive deep in many ways because there is so much ground to cover. We hope that micro examples can talk to a bigger picture. We expect there will be more questions than answers, and our hope is that this is the first of many conversations that can come out of this. We would love to inspire different working groups to come together to dig deep into how we can influence policy changes. Today is primarily a series of panels, each addressing a specific theme. We have 2 breaks built in to move your bodies and get some food, take a walk or a chat. As you watch or listen today, please feel free to knit, doodle, cuddle your child or a pet, snack as needed. Take care of yourself as we dive into these topics. Again, use the chat feature freely and often. Anything put into the chat will be anonymized for later use unless you specify otherwise. If you would specifically like a quote or a comment that you've made to have your name attached, please provide your name. Thank you to everyone who's come together to make this event possible. In particular, our financial supporters, including Sick Kids Foundation, who, apart from the government, is the largest funder in child health in the country, Kids Brain Health Network, Spark BC, and Dean. We thank our speakers and creators, our volunteers, and our behind-the-scenes team at Plan Institute, and Disability Without Poverty. We thank Amanda Fenton of Amanda Fenton Consulting, who has been a calming, organized presence throughout the development of this event, especially when I, in particular, blunder. Amanda works in participatory group design and facilitation for both online and in-person gatherings. You will meet her a little bit later, but we do want to take a few moments to welcome the very talented Kelly Foxcroft Hoyer, who, amongst many other things, is a graphic recorder and has been helping us create the visual of these 2 days together. She's going to now share 2 or 3 highlights from yesterday's session for those who couldn't join us. Kelly, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon from Tsumaas unceded Tseshat territory. Let's see. Yesterday was really full, wholehearted. Amanda, my good friend Amanda, who's with me, talks to me often as a disability mom about having a heart that can hold it all. And I think yesterday really shows the way that parents and caregivers have these hearts that can hold so much harm and so much hope all at once. And so I thank you all for your truth-telling yesterday and just a respectful and vulnerable listening. The thing when I look over the entire arc of this work, of this conversation, is that yes, what is lifted up in so many ways in the systems is the need for really complex coordinating and collaboration, as well as shifting at a policy and systems level. But at a deeper level, what really comes out is value. And I think there was a piece from the presenter, Symbia, who talked about just the definition of disability as being what was it? The language was around the gift. It wasn't focusing on a deficit. It was always focusing on a person's gift. And I really thought about this and how we value care, you know, the deeper shift that we're being invited to, and how we value humans, how we value care, how we value women. There's gender disparity, how we value caregivers. And what I see here being lifted up by your work is a need to center and make visible and deepen in our practice and our praxis, valuing humans in terms of their deep and intrinsic worth and worthiness, while also resourcing and creating frameworks that value an ecosystem that's built around humans for deep care in policy ways, in monetary ways, and in so many ways. So that are the few sentences I would say, and I look forward to the day today. Chu, Oshiak Shikle It's.
Thank you so much for that Kelly, how fantastic is that living document that we get to carry forward and carry with us after this conference? We can't wait to see what inspires your graphic output for today. Today, we're starting a little differently. We were honored to receive a video performance just for this conference by Rattle and Strum, a children's music duo based in Calgary. So gather your kids, gather the whole family, get ready to smile and dance and find some joy with these fantastic entertainers. We wanted to start on a happy, joyful, loose party note before we dive into really important themes and topics for the day. So have some fun for the next little while.
Hi, good morning. We're Rattle and Strum from Calgary, Alberta.
Thanks for joining us on day 2 of this national discussion about childhood disability without poverty. We are happy to take a little time here to get your bodies moving, to bring you some joy and laughter through song, and to celebrate the families, professionals, and allies that we have with us here today. We're going to start with a song called I Got Moves. So please break out all your best moves and just dance with us and have some fun.
Nice moves.
We could see them, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
All right. This next song is one about sort of facing up to things that you're not quite sure you're ready to do and just giving them a try. It's called Do It Anyway. It's the first day of school. I'm the new kid here. My stomach's doing flip-flops. I'm choking back the tears. What if they don't like me? Don't know if I'll fit in. What if they don't like my hair or the color of my skin? I think I see my teacher. What if she is mean? What will I do at recess? What about in between? I guess I'll take a deep breath, hold my head up high, stop looking at the ground, and start aiming for the sky, and I'll do it anyway.
must be strong and do it anyway.
It's easy to get nervous with anything that's new, like going to the doctor, learning how to tie your shoe. Sometimes I want to stay home and cover up my head. It'd be so nice and easy to stay in my comfy bed. But just because it's easy doesn't mean that it is best. Sometimes you've got to try it, you've got to take the test. And sometimes it won't work out, sometimes you will miss. But mostly you will find that doing it is worth the risk. So do it anyway, even though you're scared. Or do it anyway, though you don't feel quite prepared. Or do it anyway, you've gotta be brave. No one can do it for you, you're the one who must be strong and do it anyway. Oh, do it anyway.
Give it a try, right now.
Do it anyway. You got this. Do it anyway. Was it hard the first time that you played drums in front of a group of people?
Certainly was. I always wanted to play and be on stage, and I thought it would be a good place to hide behind the drums. But it turns out you can't really hide behind the drums.
Nope, they're loud.
Yeah,
They make a
they
lot of
can
sound.
be, yeah. But I did it anyway.
You did it anyway. Was it worth it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at you now.
yeah.
All right. Well, that might sound like kind of a serious song, but we also really like to be silly. You want to do a silly song?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's do it. This one's called There's Always Time for Silly.
Oh, one sec.
Oh,
The cowbell
Oh,
always
have-
makes things a little sillier.
yeah.
Let's see if I can hook her up here. I think that's gonna work.
All right, let's do it. Have you ever tried chicken wing pudding? Have you ever tried old sock pie?
You.
If not, you're missing out, my friends. And here's the reason why. There's always time for silly. There's always time for fun. If you're 6 years old or 73, well, silly is for everyone. Have you ever tried to kiss your elbow or tickled your funny bone? Something you just got to try, 'cause you can do it on your own. 'Cause there's always time for silly. There's always time for fun. If you're 6 years old or 73, well, silly is for everyone. How about some silly singing? Doodly 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 doo ba ba dee ba doodly 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 doo ba.
Shake it a waka.
I like to sing to the tulips. I like to dance to the car. I tell jokes to the lampshades just to see how funny they are. 'Cause there's always time for silly. There's always time for fun. If you're 6 years old or 73, well, silly is for everyone. Silly is for everyone. Oh, silly is for everyone. Yeah.
Silly enough for you?
Almost. I like it pretty silly. Yeah. All right. Well, we played a few songs off of our albums that we have out, just called Rattle and Strum and Ants in My Pants. And now we're going to play a song that's going to be on the next album. We've been doing a recent project along with some collaborators, the Kidnauts, who are improv actors. And so we've been doing some shows with them, and we're gonna have our next one at the Calgary Folk Fest, which is really exciting, coming up in July. And when we work with them, they ask for input from the audience and they take the ideas that the kids have and they make a whole story up right there on the spot. And we sing some songs alongside that help kind of move the plot along, and we do some sound effects as we go. And we would like to play you a couple of the songs that we're going to play along with our new project with the Kiddernauts. We're going to do one about the bad guys, because in every story, you know, a bad guy comes along. So this is a kind of a silly and fun song about the bad guys. If at home you want to, you know, do your sneakiest moves you can, move your sneaky eyebrows, or, you know, put on your fake bad guy mustache. Whatever you think looks sneaky and bad guyish. It's kind of fun to pretend to be a bad guy for a little while. Here come the bad guys. Here come the bad guys. Here come the bad guys. Here come. Oh, here come the bad guys. Looking so tough. Coming to stir up trouble. Here come the bad guys. They'll blow up all your stuff. Leave you in the rubble. Is that a real mustache? Or is it a disguise? Wear those dark sunglasses to hide those sneaky eyes. Oh, here come the bad guys, looking so tough, coming to stir up trouble. Here come the bad guys, they'll blow up all your stuff, leave you in the rubble. They don't play ukulele, 'cause it's such a happy sound. Just instruments of evil, and evil laughing all around. Do your best bad guy laugh like this, right? Here goes bad, looking so tough, coming to stir up trouble. Here come the bad guys, they'll blow up all your stuff, leave you in the rubble. Come the bad guys. Here come the bad Well, one of the things you might have noticed too when it comes to storytelling, so that can be whether you're reading a book or someone's just telling you a story or you're watching a movie, lots of times it kind of leads up to a big climax, they call it, where something is happening and you might get left on a cliffhanger, or you're just wondering what's going to happen next. It could be the end of a chapter, the end of something before the advertisement comes on, at the end or partway through your movie or your show. You're just wondering what's going to happen next. So we wrote a song about that. It's called, surprisingly,
What happens next?
yes.
Yeah, you were wondering what was going to happen next.
I was.
What was that? Yeah.
Well, holy cow. Did you see that? I'm sitting here on the edge of my seat. What a surprise. Couldn't believe it. It nearly knocked me off my feet. The sky's hanging from a cliff. It's so perplexed. The wind is going around making crazy sound effects. There's a tiger above and hungry sharks below. I gotta know what happens next. What will he do? Can he make it? I'm biting off my fingernails. It's so much stress. Oh, I can't take it. I gotta guess all of the details. Will he climb to the top with his muscles flexed? Or lose his grip and tumble to his death? Or will he be saved by the superhero? I gotta know what happens next. Superhero trapped somewhere. Her powers have been taken. Will she make it out somehow in time to save his bacon? If it was you, what would you do? Is there a solution here? Give me a sign, send me a clue. The possibilities fill me with fear. My brain is working overtime. This is quite the mess. I'm running out of ideas. I'm not the best. I just can't wait till tomorrow. I gotta know what happens. to guess what happens next. Well, not quite, because I guess we got one more song.
Or write a story about what happens next.
That's true. I think you can all write a story. Well, we'd like to end off on my favorite song. What's it called?
It's called My Favorite Song.
Yeah, we go with the obvious song titles. It's just how it goes.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a good one for dancing, too. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Turn it up, this is my favorite song. It's got a good beat, it really makes me wanna sing along. Yeah, you know you wanna sing along, so come on, oh come on, this is my favorite song. Starts out quiet, but it ends up strong. A lot of little short notes, and then one that is long. Just one line of chord that happens in the verse, and then we lead back to the chorus, which we sing first. Turn it up, this is my favorite song. It's got a good beat, it really makes me wanna sing along. Yeah, you know you wanna sing along, so come on, oh come on, this is my favorite song. Doesn't matter what kind of day I've had, makes me feel happy when I'm feeling sad. It starts with a tingle in my baby toe, and then it shoots up in my body. Way I go, yeah, turn it up, this is my favorite song. It's got a good beat, it really makes me wanna sing along. Yeah, you know you wanna sing along, so come on, oh come on, this is my favorite song. Might be in the shower, on the highway, rolling down the highway. Wherever I am, I'm gonna belt it through the world. I'm gonna sing my way. So turn it up, this is my favorite song. It's got a good beat, it really makes me wanna sing along. Yeah, you know you wanna sing along, so come on, oh come on, this is my favorite song. Turn it up, this is my favorite song. It's got a good beat, it really makes me wanna sing along. Yeah, you know you wanna sing along, so come on, this is my favorite song. Is that really your favorite song?
Oh, yeah. One of them.
Yeah.
One
well,
of them.
yeah.
I got a lot of favorite songs.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming over and to our house.
Yeah, hanging out in our little rehearsal space here in Calgary.
It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us. There's going to be a lot of great panels ahead today. You can find and follow us on Facebook or Instagram, Rattle and Strum. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
There we go.
Fun. I just danced for the last little bit. I hope you did too. Got your body moving. I want to thank Rattle and Strum so much for opening day 2 for us on such a joyful note. That pun is intended. And Rattle and Strum will be performing with the Kidnaughts at the 44th Annual Calgary Folk Music Festival, July 23rd to 30th. So if you're looking for a summer getaway, you can go hear them live. In our first panel for today, we are learning from families. These are parents with lived experience as caregivers to children with disabilities and are connected to organizations that represent many more parents. We want to acknowledge the power and the passion that people with limited resources of time and money, limited capacity in terms of barriers to work, can put towards recommendations and contributions for a more inclusive and equitable future for the health and well-being of all disabled children living in Canada. We are also thrilled that this panel has representation from the Maritimes all the way to the West Coast. The jokes are going to be coming all day. And our panelists today are Abby Aduake. She is mom to an autistic boy, a community liaison for the Family Resource Network at the Calgary Immigrant Women's Association, and a member of the National Advisory Council on Early Learning and Childcare. Khadija Zafar is a mother of 3 with a master's in education. She brings lived experience as the caregiver to a disabled child. She is a service navigator at Smile Canada, a charity dedicated to supporting racialized children and youth with disabilities and their families. And our third panelist is Alana Malele. She lives in Prince Edward Island with her 4 children, including 2 diagnosed with autism and 1 with a rare disorder who is medically complex. Since losing her husband in a motor vehicle accident in 2020, she has been a solo parent and deeply understands the barriers to employment faced by solo parents and the ensuing financial instability when trying to keep up with extraordinary costs of her children's support needs. Our moderator today, as yesterday, is Brenda Lenahan, my co-convener, who is mom to a young son with health complexities. He inspired her involvement in advocacy and research. She co-founded the grassroots group BC Complex Kids, and was appointed to the National Advisory Council on Early Learning and Childcare and the Ministry Advisory Council for Children and Youth with Support Needs in BC. I know she also has a lot to offer herself on this panel. So Brenda, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Amanda, and good morning, everybody. So nice to see you this morning, and thank you for being here. We actually, all of us met the other day and had a very fulsome chat. We could talk for hours, the 4 of us, comparing notes across the country and shared experiences and a lot of there's disparities between the provinces that really came out as we were talking as well. We're going to start this morning just by each of you taking an opportunity to share from your perspective. All of you have, great experience in your communities and in your own families, and just sharing the things that you really want to share with everybody today. So I think we are starting with Abby, and yeah, everybody, if you can stick to sort of the 4-minute mark, that would be amazing. And then we'll have a conversation after. So Abby, over to you. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Good morning from here. With gratitude and mutual respect, I am acknowledging I am joining from Calgary. And Calgary is the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederation, the Siksika, the Kainai, and the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the ERS Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nations, and all the people that make their home in the 37 region of Southern Alberta. I am very grateful to live, work, and play here. So once again, I am Abiodun. I am a Nigerian-Canadian mother of 2 children, one of whom is a 5-year-old autistic boy. So I think I have the first-hand experience of what individuals that live with disabilities and their families face. So for me personally, the first major issue was about navigating the system. Here in Calgary, it was so hard to even get a diagnosis for my son. So it took me like a year and a half being tossed around as an immigrant and someone that could speak English. It was even harder for me to get a diagnosis for my son. I met people that didn't really understand my needs. And as I was sharing, I was being tossed around. I was being told, oh, it's just speech delay. Oh, it's just an African boy that has so much energy in him, which is so typical of a kid. So I was being dismissed a lot. And I can imagine how hard it would be for other parents or immigrants like myself that can't even speak English, how to navigate the health system. After finally getting a diagnosis for my son for a year and a half, the next thing was accessing support here in Calgary and in Alberta as a whole to get the FSCD, who is the family support for family with kids with disability. That's the support unit that support us. It took me about 6 months to finally get support for my kids. And getting support for my kids required me to be able to paint a picture that wasn't really speaking well of my son. So for you to get service, you have to really paint a picture of the worst day in your kid's life. So it's like you're painting a picture of a devil for them to be able to support your child. So right now, Together Support in Calgary, the wait list is about 18 to 24 months. And we all know the importance of early intervention for anything. So that's the next challenge I face. And above all, I'm an advocate for childcare. So, kids, why? This will help us so much relief if we just have childcare and the financial burden to it. So as this conference is about the poverty. So I'll just dwell a bit on childcare. My son was being tossed around in childcare. No childcare would take my son. I had to keep a job. Like I said, I was a new immigrant myself. I had to keep a job. I had to find support for my family. My son was being told from one daycare to the other, oh, we can't take him. Oh, he's a risk to other kids. Oh, he's a risk to the safety and every other person. I get called up like every 3 days to pick my son up from daycare. How do I keep a job down when my son can be in daycare? So right now, the support is, what is childcare for us? Our kids on disability, our kids on any support needs, what do we do with them? If we can work, what's going to be the financial implication for our family? So that's the major thing. I'll be dwelling more on that as we talk, because childcare, I believe, can really help a lot of families, including myself and everybody, because it's not just the childcare. Our kids have equal rights. They should be included. They should have accessible right to everything like every other kids. But that's not the case for me here. So that's one thing. And when we don't have childcare, then we look at financial implication for families. How are we going to be able to survive if I have to leave work? And if not, I have a flexible work, and my husband has a flexible work at a point, I will have to be jobless to be able to sit at home since there's no daycare that's going to take my son. And another thing is the social isolation we face. So before I leave my house every day, if I need to take a walk, just a simple 5-minute walk with my son, it takes so much mental preparation because I don't know what is going to be. I hardly go out, I hardly have friends because not everybody gets this. You get this negative attitude from people in the community. You can work with your son, and my son decides to be in the middle of the road having a huge blown out tantrum, and everyone gives you this look of, oh, what's wrong with you? So what I've seen is people are more prone to just judgment, negative attitude from people, and affect the mental health for we family members, their siblings and everything, because we have to deal with being stuck at home because you don't want your child to go out and you're thinking of how long it's going to be able to calm the child down when they're overstimulated probably by the environment, the noise around them, and just a lot of other things. So this is just a few things, and we'll be sharing more as the conversation goes. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Abby. You shared so many things that I just off the top will say, same thing in BC with wait lists for autism assessments, challenges with childcare. So supporting a child like mine with medical complexity in childcare is a challenge, and also kids with who are neurodiverse or who are in the early years and haven't got a diagnosis yet, but they're presenting with different challenges in that setting, and they find themselves excluded from childcare, and it's devastating for families, both on the inclusion side for their children, but also on the financial side for the lack of ability to work. And I'm glad that you and I are both at the national table together, so we can hopefully raise that voice there. Thank you, Abby. Let's move. We're going to move across the country. So we're going to head to Ontario with Khadija.
Hello, everyone, and early Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of you. My name is Khadija. I'm a mother of 3 children. So I have 2 children without a disability, and my oldest one, he has a disability. He has cerebral palsy. I didn't have any problems when it came to diagnosis, but mine was the opposite. They diagnosed him pretty fast, but when it came to services, I was completely lost. They gave me the diagnosis. They saved him when, we didn't think he would make it. And then I was kind of left on my own. I was 21 when I had my son. It was planned. I didn't know what was going to happen, that, he was going to have a disability. We weren't, this was not something we had known. And the reason why this panel is so important to me is because I lived in poverty myself. My husband and I lived in poverty for, good 8 years. While we went to school, while we were students, we really struggled. We have used food banks, we have used all the, help we could, but we couldn't use many of those things because my husband was still working. So it's like, you have, Ontario Works, which pays for, people who have low income, but we never qualified for it because we were both working. I did my undergrad. It took me 8 years to finish my undergrad. It took me 4 years to finish my master's because I have children, with child with disability. While I was doing my master's and finishing my master's, while my son had his hips dislocated and he went through a double major hip surgery, 9-hour surgery. And in order for that to happen, for him to even just get a surgery, which was something he needed because he started getting osteopenia from not having a surgery, we had to move. We had to move from region to region until, a hospital would pick us up and, that he would be able to get, the surgery that he should have had 3 years before, prior to that. And the experience with healthcare system has been, there are always positive sides, but the negative kind of take over, because the negative experiences when it comes to discrimination, when it comes to racism, when it comes to the way people look at us, people, when they look at me, my husband is Caucasian. His family has been in Canada for over 300 years. But when people look at me, the way I am treated with my son is with a lot of hostility. People think that I just want government handouts. Even I have done a lot of advocacy work. I've been in the Toronto Star, which is one of the major newspapers, multiple times. I've been in newspapers. I've been on the news, for activism. And, the comments I have read about what people think about me, they're painful. People think we want government handouts, that these are just immigrants who, want to take advantage of the government. There is no money from the government to us, so we can't really take advantage of it, even if we wanted to. We have really struggled, but it didn't stop me from being an activist, for fighting for justice, for fighting not just for my child but for other children with disabilities, which is why I have ended up working for an organization like Smile Canada Support Services that serves over 600 plus racialized families who have children and youth with disabilities. And the reason why we focus so much on that is because there are so many barriers already when you have a child with disability, and every time you add another label on top of that, you have another, it makes it even harder, right? So we have, we work with families who are immigrants, refugees, their children have disability, they're dealing with poverty because they have just come from another country. They don't have their basic needs met when it comes to a home, when it comes to even food. So we have a lot of barriers that our families face, I have faced, and it's hard to navigate the system. It's overwhelming. So I'm hoping that through these conferences, through these conversations, we can bring change, because change is definitely needed for all of our children. They all deserve respect, honor, and the help that they're supposed to get. None of us plan to have children with disabilities, but this is what we have been dealt with, and we are making the most of it. And I feel like because God has given me a child with disability, it is my job to make sure that I can make a difference, because that's what I want to do. So I have been part of, the newspapers, video, doing, what is it called? Even like proofreading a lot of disability books. I've just published. So there's a book coming out. It's actually from a mom in BC. And it's called The Mother's Gift. And I wrote a chapter in it. And it has stories of mothers who are talking about the different things that they have struggled with in different provinces when it comes to healthcare. What are some ways that professionals can make a difference? I'm just hoping that, we can bring change. That's the whole point, right? And it starts off by having uncomfortable conversations that just maybe make us feel down, but also empowered, because we are finally talking about things that are important and relevant. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Yeah, and it is important, and it's so great to get everyone together and start having these discussions across the country. You've done some amazing work, and that's how I came to meet you, is through, hearing of your work with Smile, and also seeing your op-eds in the newspaper, and you've done a really wonderful job. I appreciate you sharing also the experiences of racialized communities. I mean, I came to this as a privileged middle-class mom, and I found myself solo and challenged financially, incredibly challenged, which is why I'm here doing this, because I know if I'm challenged that there's people out there that are really struggling, and there isn't anything to take advantage of, even if you wanted to. There's no support there, like you said. It's yeah. We are going to move now to Alana out in PEI. We're so excited to have East Coast representation. Thanks, Alana.
Hi. I had a whole speech compared, but listening to everybody and stuff, I feel like there's nothing I could read that could probably get better than if I just, I guess, speak from the heart or go from it from there. I'm a solo mom of 4 amazing children. I have one who's 16 who is neurotypical, and I have a 13-year-old who has complex needs, an 8-year-old who is autistic, and a 4-year-old who was just recently diagnosed autistic. Here in the Maritimes, it's a huge struggle because even though I live very close to a major city, we really all feel like we live in rural communities. Um, for example, I did have to wait a year for my first child to be diagnosed with autism. My second, I had to wait 2.5 years to be diagnosed with autism from the first set time of referral. Um, my complex needs child was actually born normal, or so we thought. He came into this world beautiful, chubby, and this squishy little space ever. When he was a couple days old, I was holding him and he made a really weird movement. I told the nurse that it was like he shivered. I later learned in life that babies don't shiver, but they can make a quiver type movement, kind of like a chill more than a shiver. They took him from me and said he was cold and fine. We've had him at 3 months old at home, and he started doing the same thing, but it was very more compulsive like. I asked him why he's shivering. We are not cold. I'm holding him tight. I turn around and my husband looks into his pupils and he instantly says they're fully dilated. I instantly knew what was happening. I take him to the emerge and I was treated like I just walked in and said I had a sore leg. Um, we were triaged and we did have to only wait about 20 some minutes before we were taken back to the doctors. He looked him over, kept telling me he was just sick and it's just a febrile seizure. I kept saying that he's not sick. They took a whole bunch of tests. They later admitted him about 3 o'clock in the morning. At 6 a.m., I woke up and I was just looking at him and he went into full on compulsions. The doctors and the nurses all ran in. He had a CT scan later on that day because in Prince Edward Island, children under the age of 12 don't get MRIs. They don't have the capacity to do so. From there on, our life basically was a huge bulldozer of our life never being the same again. We then have to take multiple trips a year to the IWK, which is in Halifax. For us, it is approximately 3.5 hour drive each way. And we have islanders that go over anywhere from at least once a month to every couple of weeks. And it's a huge burden on us. I was only 21. My husband was 22. We had low income wages. I wasn't working because I just had a baby. And there was no way to fund. I went to social services and asked for money so I could go to the IWK, and they turned us down. They said we made too much when we were one wage and he was making minimum wage, but apparently we made too much to get any funding. At that point, I never asked them again for money because it was a huge blindside and it just broke my heart. That's what it's there for, but we couldn't use it. Fast forward a few years, more than a few years, my husband passed away in 2020, and I've been hit with this burden of financial stress like I never knew I could before. I thought that being a non-working parent of 4 children, 3 with disabilities, I would be able to access more support than I currently ever gotten. I've been turned down by all of them because of my husband's life insurance, which is very heartbreaking. Yes, I do have this money from my husband from his life insurance, but I also can't work, and my children are ages, well, at the time 2 to 13, and I have to support them until they're 18 or longer if my son with complex disabilities were to live longer. But they all turned me down because I have this money. Sorry. It's very disheartening to think that all these programs are there to support people like myself and like the other parents on here, and I can't access them. I was literally told that if I went and bought a boat with the money and had the boat in my driveway, they would help me. But because I'm responsible and trying to look for my children's needs, I'm being punished for that, which it's just unfair. My biggest thing is what I take from this is that I'm my children's everything from nurse to therapist to everything in between. And all I really want to be is my children's mom. And I never get to be my child's mom. And that is why I've decided to try and reach out to associations like this to move forward all these different things. So us parents can just be parents. Thanks.
Thank you, Alana. Yeah, it is so true. We find ourselves as caregivers, therapists, and there's not enough time just for parenting and being and doing the things we want to do with our kids. It's and truly people do, I think society in general, that's part of raising awareness is I think people generally think in Canada that we do take care of our children's health needs. But we're not doing that for kids with disabilities. It's years of ableism and policy that just we are left behind. There really is not a lot of support there, unfortunately. It's a universal experience. We're going to move into a couple of questions, and we've talked a bit about some of it, but here we go. From your realm of expertise, I know you are all experts. We all are as moms of kids with disabilities. What does the childhood disability support system look like in your province, and what specific areas are not funded or underfunded, leaving you without support needed to thrive, or that families end up paying out of pocket? And we've talked about this. Smile is a charity that steps in to fill healthcare gaps, and we all have likely needed to use charity funding for various things in our day. And yeah, I want to explore that a little bit more too, if you can, where those gaps are and where charity is filling in for healthcare in your province. So I will let anyone jump in who would like to start.
Okay, I'll go first. So here in Alberta, what we have, like I said earlier, we have the family support for children with disability. So I'll be using FSCD for that. So what they provide is you apply for that. You have to have a diagnosis and a bunch of certification. Your doctor or whoever diagnosed or specialist, we have to fill a bunch of forms for you, and then you submit to them. And after that, right now, like I said, it's taking like 10 months to 2 years for them to get back to you and tell you, you have a caseworker, you have assigned somebody. Afterwards, you have a meeting with your caseworker, and then from there. So what FSCD supply or support with is creating a specialized plan for your child. Sometimes they pay for respite. That's another thing that we'll be talking about. They pay for a certain amount. So you're allocated based on your needs, a certain number of hours for the year for respite. And also you have specialized service. Not everyone, but like I said, when you present your case to your caseworker, based on that person assumption of your needs, that person will probably recommend service for you. Services could include specialized service. So you might have speech therapy, you might have occupational therapist, behavioral therapy, psychology in your team, depending on the assessments. And they provide respite, they provide community aid. So if your child has to do some community events, you can have aid work going with them. They also provide funding for aid in the daycare or childcare, sorry, for kids. So, but that's another thing I'll just brush about. So for my son, he had permission because of his needs and everything to have, if they can employ someone to work with him, a one-on-one, which was very appreciated for daycare. But the amount that was being funded was never enough. You're not going to get workers that want to get paid $17 to work with a child that the worker is going to get punched, kicked, beaten for minimum wage. So you're not going to get that, even though the funding is there. So really, I as a parent know how hard it is to tell someone, come and get $15 or $17 to get headbutted, to get kicked and did all day. So these fundings are there, but how efficient are they? We also have something called the Abata Aids to Daily Living. This provides sometimes help with medical equipment and some of the supplies that help for daily living. You can apply for diapers and sometimes for kids that are both their own age that they should be using too. You qualify for some of these things, but going through this process is cumbersome. For most of us that are parents of kids with any kind of support needs, we know what paperwork and everything is like for us. And going to look for service and you have to do so much paperwork is another thing. Our education system is another thing to concern about. Most parents now are looking into the private specialized service because our public school funding and supporting classrooms are nothing to write home about. So even though the education will say they're being funded, we need to really like, how safe are your kids in those care? We also have the Better Child Health Benefits, which is just universal for low-income parents. And like Elena and Khadija have said, what the gap for low income is just appalling. Like when you say low income, you have to probably be working half day on minimum wage to qualify for some of these things they are saying. So these are the things. When I look at areas of support that are not underfunded or not funded at all, mental health, like nobody cares about mental health is a big issue nationally right now, but now look at us that have to deal with how stressed we are looking at the siblings of some of these kids, the life they have, because mom is stuck helping. I have a 1-year-old and I can tell you she's growing so fast because half of the time I'm with my 5-year-old. He needs more help. He needs more things. And she's growing. She's just one. And sometimes I feel like the first year of her life, she can barely have that moment. I barely have that moment with her because her brother needs all the help all the time. I spend my day doing therapy and also we don't have any mental health services, especially for families or kids with disability. Those available, the wait list is long. If you need to access any mental health counseling and everything, you're talking about, you're probably going to be on a wait list for a year. And imagine what that does to us, like waiting a year to just assess, right now I need someone to talk to. How can I be the best? How can I be, like Elena said, how can I be the therapist for my child? How can I be the mother? How can I be the nurse? How can I be everything when I am overworked myself? So we don't have that. Respite is another thing. I said FSCD fund respite, but they fund you to a certain number of hours for the year. So I used to get 120 hours for the year, which is like 10 hours per month. 10 hours per month is just probably for me to go to the grocery stores. I spend more than 10 hours to be able to get the needs of my kids. So it's not like I need the respite to rest or to just go. Sometimes respite is just for me to be able to cook or do dishes while someone watches my son. And do we really think that's respite? So these are the services available. And my son is partly verbal. So assistive technology is something else that we are not getting help with. So I need to get communication device for my son. If I couldn't afford it because of our income, then my son won't be able to probably communicate and his behaviors are going to escalate because nobody will understand. He doesn't have his words yet. So those are part of things I see that are not really funded in this province. That's about that concerning. And for charity, just like we said, everybody, when the government is not doing their bit, when the child's rights are not being met because they have disabilities or they have extra support, We should be the focus of our community. When those ones have been left behind, then parents have to fall back to charity. So we have the Easter Seal Alberta, we have the Children's Ability Fund, Kids Upfront Foundation, and some other foundations that have really stepped up to be able to help. They help with grants, they help parents with medical expenses, which we know how high that could be sometimes for some of us. They help with respite and some adaptive equipment also in Alberta. So I'll just let others jump in.
Thanks, Abby. Yeah, it really is a rights issue that the support is just completely inadequate, isn't it? I think Khadija was going to jump in here.
Sure. So in Ontario, we get something called assistance for children with severe disabilities. You have to apply for it. You get monthly money, like anywhere from $100 to $400, but you have to make under 60,000. Then you qualify for it. So we're gonna lose everything that we were getting before because of our income went up. But that means that my son, whose wheelchair used to be covered, now we're gonna have to pay 25% of it. 25%, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have a child who can't sit up, who doesn't have head control, who doesn't have any trunk control, and you start putting all these customizations, we will be paying over $7,000 to $10,000 for the wheelchair, and that's just 25% of what we will have to pay. A lot of the fundings that he was getting, we don't qualify for them, whether it's for charities either, because a lot of the charities, if you make over 60,000, you don't qualify for it. We wanted to, get a house that would be accessible. One of the biggest problem has been that we used to live in a 3-story house. We used to carry my son's wheelchair up and down the stairs, and causing me to have chronic pain, but I'm not considered to have a disability myself because it's chronic pain, and trying to get disability for that is just another fight that I am not ready to fight. And we have had to live in very inaccessible houses. That's been the biggest problem. In the houses we have lived in, we try to make them accessible, but the way they're made, you just cannot. So you really struggle, and trying to find an apartment that you can fit a family of 3 growing children with the amount of equipments and family of 5, it's very hard to find a 3-bedroom apartment. It's very expensive. My son, the reason why his hips dislocated is because he wasn't getting enough therapy. I used to have to fight for him to get even once a month of physiotherapy. And they used to laugh at me when I used to say that, can you give at least once a week of therapy? They used to laugh at me thinking, there's no way you can get that. And they were laughing not because they felt like, because they were like, this is not possible. The government won't do that. Like, as physiotherapists, we can't. It's not their fault. They can't. They have to do what the government tells them. And they were not able to give us therapy. My son ended up having osteopenia. He ended up dislocating both of his hips and having a lot more issues because this therapy was not available. My husband and I having chronic pain now that I have to suffer with every day because we had to carry my son up and down the stairs, which we still do. He's getting bigger, we're still carrying him because there's funding available through government called March of Dimes. You can get up to $70,000 to make your house accessible, but you have to own your house. But in order for you to get that funding, you have to make under 70,000. I don't know any person here now from my generation who owns a house, who has a child with disability and makes under 60,000 to be able to qualify. It is not possible. Both of us work now, we have good jobs, but to be able to qualify for these things, we don't qualify anymore. So we didn't qualify before because we didn't own a house and we were renting. We're trying to buy a house now. We don't qualify because we make too much. So, they have all these, there's this dominant narrative in Canada that, the children are looked after. We have all this funding in Ontario. Ontario is better than Alberta and all these other provinces. It's not. There are so many red tapes on every funding that you can't get it. They advertise it that we have this and that, but when you are the one dealing with it, you realize those things are not there. They're not there. Yeah. Whether it's housing, whether it's getting a modified van. I used to carry my son's 50-pound wheelchair while I was pregnant and putting it in my car so I could take him to daycare. So either you do that or you just don't take them to daycare. You don't take them to school. Even within schools, we had a lot of issues. The first week my son went to school, he had bruises on his back. Why? Because they left him in his wheelchair all day. Other than for changing his diaper, they never reclined him and he had bruises. And when I complained, they called children's aid on me. The school turned on me because I was advocating too much. So
Yeah.
we have so many issues we deal with. The barriers we have, there's barrier in everything, whether it's housing,
There's
whether
so
it's
many
just,
barriers.
it's just that
Yeah.
there's no end to it. And then we shouldn't need, like, I was talking to the CEO of Smile and we said, we shouldn't need Smile. The purpose of Smile is so that we can get rid of these organizations. We shouldn't have to have charities
Yeah.
because the government should be picking up the slack.
Yeah, these charities are definitely picking up the pieces of health. It's healthcare. It's healthcare needs. It's when you talk about accessible vehicles and accessible homes, that is healthcare. We need to be able to live safely in our homes, and our kids need to be safe, and we need to be able to be in community. We need support for those things. It's the financial burdens are huge, and the barriers are immense. Thank you, Khadija. We are going to move to Alana, and we actually are going to get a little short on time here, but if you
I'll
want
be quick.
to maybe, yeah, speak into a couple things, and we'll do a little, yeah.
Yes. I will just piggyback back on both the girls. It's the exact same here in the Maritimes, maybe worse in some places, maybe better in a couple others. We on the island, I can't speak for the rest of the Maritimes, we get approximately $300 a month, which average out to be about maybe 7 hours a month, which again, that's not very much time when you're requiring a respite of a huge amount of respite need. That is literally time to go to the grocery store or do like what they said. Same with cost of living. Right now, the island's cost of living is highest than it's ever been. To rent a shack on the road literally is $1,000 a month. We currently, as I said, I have 4 kids and myself, live in a 2-bedroom duplex because it's the only place that we can afford, and that is all flat, so I don't have to carry the wheelchair up and down stairs and stuff. And I too can't afford or have any access to accessible vehicles and have to lift my child's wheelchair into the back of the van. And because of the amount of children I have, I can't actually have an accessible van because it will take up all the back seats for my kids. But what I wanted to say on this matter is that although there's a huge lack of funding in all areas in the Maritimes and, from the sounds of it, Canada, I don't think I can name one thing in the Maritimes or again Canada that fully supports or gives equal support to families with disabilities. One of the highest underfunded programs in the Maritimes would be All Therapies, which is physio, occupational, speech, and sensory. Our school-age children, no matter their needs, high or low, are not getting sorry, I can't say that word right now. Therapy. This means if the family has the means, they'll be paying out of pocket, or we have to go completely without. There has been so much proof how much therapy can even support neurotypical children that it shouldn't even be second guessed for children with needs. My children who have been diagnosed moderate to mild autistic could potentially live a very normal and potentially straightforward life and not be a strain on the healthcare as they grow up. Between, if they were not to get the therapeutical needs, they may have, when they grow up, special homes, their mental stability might be not as well, potentially of hurting themselves or others. But if they receive the proper therapies during their school age or even younger, these issues may not arise or may not even exist. For the children with high needs, if they were to have the proper therapy, his overall health and strain on his body could again result in less hospitalization, appointments, and overall enjoyment and quality of life. This shouldn't even be second guess, like I said earlier. All children should get the proper amount of therapy for their needs. Our therapists right now are approximately giving each child that needs therapy, no matter high or low, about 5 hours a year, and that's it.
Yeah, therapy it's a piece that I think is a challenge from what I've heard across the country as well. And it is one that speaks so directly to it being healthcare and it being really impactful on health outcomes. And it is not sensible to not support kids in those ways with behavior support and therapy interventions. It's yeah, I think that's a challenge across the board. We just have a very brief moment. I'm going to ask the last question, and we're going to have to answer it in a brief 30-second, 45-second version of one thing, and I'm going to just speak one thing into it as well, but one thing that would have a positive impact, like a policy change that you would like to see that would really make an impact for your family and others. I just wanted to make one example. Alana shared with me previously about all of the costs of travel from PEI to the Children's Hospital in Nova Scotia. None of it is covered for her. And in BC, we do have a program that is working that pays for travel expenses I live remotely. It's 4 hours and a ferry to get to Vancouver. And my travel is paid for, my ferry, my mileage, and my hotel, and that makes sense. And my parking when I get there. And we need to see ideas like that spread so that Alana has that support too. Now we're going to do a fire round.
Just because I was actually going to speak on that, just to piggyback off it. My biggest one would be the travel. Like you said, I did all the calculations. So Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI and Newfoundland all have to travel to Halifax for all their special care needs, which is like cardiologist, neurology, ortho, dental, all those different needs. It ranges anywhere between 100 kilometers to 1,300 kilometers. Within that, we have to pay for gas. Newfoundland has to pay for the ferry, the boat, which ranges anywhere from $200 to $300. The bridge for PEI, we have to pay $50 to cross that. There's tolls in between Dartmouth Bridge and the highway tolls. And hotels cost anywhere between $120 to $200 a night. And none of that is covered. People like to, as we said before, like to be like, well, you can claim it on your taxes. But we all know that really means nothing. We may see a really quarter of what we get back. What I ranged is that there's a total between $300 and $700 per trip per family. Most of us families try to do it in one day from the island, which means I leave the home around 5:30 in the morning and don't get home until 11:30 at night, with 2 to 3 appointments in between, which we all can attest to, that these appointments can be very stressful, very mentally draining. And then I'm driving 3.5 hours each way, which is also a mental toll on everybody. We do have 2 charities that you kind of apply for, Hope Air and the Irving program. With Hope Air, you need at least 2 weeks to process it. So anything that's a quick appointment that they pop up, or if my child is airlifted to the IWK, I can't apply for it. And that will provide the bridge fare. The Irving program is for gas cards, which they can give you up to $60 if you're from the mayor or from PEI. But you only get that if you have more than 3 to 4 trips per year, and if they have any on hand, which typically they never do. So I maybe see those every few years. One last quick thing. I spoke to her family, and in the past 6 months, she's had 56 total appointments between home hospital and PEI and the IWK. Each trip cost her approximately $225, and they made 11 trips, equaling $2,475.
Thanks, Alana. Yeah, it is something that needs to be addressed. Absolutely. Okay, we are essentially out of time. Is there a couple words you want to say, Abby or Khadija, just to wrap it up?
So just to wrap up, I would just say that I know the federal government and provinces are working on childcare system, but I think every parent of disability, every parent that have kids on the disability should please advocate for their kids. They're trying to make this cheap, but what we are saying is marginalization of our children. So please let us be an advocate for our kids in this childcare. They're trying to build an accessible and inclusive system. Let's ensure that the inclusivity of our kids is paramount in all provinces and this childcare needs. Childcare will elevate a lot of issues for we parents. So if our kids can go to childcare, we can work. We won't be thinking of my financial stress will be reduced. And then poverty will also be something, right? So that's my final words. Everybody go out there, know what's happening in your province with childcare and advocate for our rights. Thanks.
Thank you, Abby. I agree. Khadija?
For me, it's funding for children for therapy, because a lot of our children struggle and have a lot of health issues because of not getting funding, and also accessible housing. My husband and I, our backs are broken because we don't have accessible housing. And that's not just the case for us, but for all the other parents who have children with disabilities as well, especially physical disabilities.
Absolutely. It's an issue across the board. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to do this panel with you and to meet you. And I feel like we're going to stay connected and maybe do some advocacy together. Thank you again. I'm passing it over now to Amanda F. to wrap up with her Menti poll.
Lovely. Thank you, everyone. This is Amanda F. speaking. My first time speaking today. I'm a white woman with very short brown hair with some silver streaks arriving as the years go by. I just want to take a moment knowing that it was so important for the organizers to be able to hear from everyone, and that we're a big group and it's hard to do that. So we do have a tool called Menti that I'm going to put a link in the Zoom chat just as a way to gather your insights, your reflections, and in particular from having just listened to these stories of families, it's a bit of a gift back to them. What did you hear that you're holding close to your heart that maybe really resonated, or, oh, you just want to reflect back. So I'm going to pop a link into the Zoom chat to the Menti poll. Your contributions are anonymous, but they will be visible to us. If Menti is not working for you, please also use the Zoom chat. We'll make sure that we collect them all together. We do have the French translation of the question. When you go to Menti, the French translation isn't there, but please contribute if French is your preferred way of typing. Don't worry about spelling or grammar or anything like that. You can also share multiple insights to be able to just gather your reflections. What insights from these stories of families' experiences do we want to carry forward for a more inclusive and equitable future? So that Menti is open. Again, use the Zoom chat if Menti is not working for you. We are going to use this as a way to gently transition into a break as well. So the Menti doesn't close. Feel free to type away over the break. And also panelists, if there was something that you're realizing, I meant to share this and I forgot, please also use the Menti so we can continue to hear your voice. And we're going to take a break because we've been together for a while. This morning has been so powerful already. So just to be able to take a pause, honor what your body and your heart and your mind is needing. We're going to be back together at, let me just check my timing here. I think it's 35 minutes after the hour. So unless you're in a province that is on the half hour, that will not be correct. In Pacific time, that would be 10:35. We're going to come back from our well-being break. During the break, there will also just be some really lovely contributions from parents that are being shared on the screen. So you're welcome to enjoy those, but also take a break. And we'll be back at 35 minutes after the hour Pacific time. Enjoy a pause, everyone.
Ten things no parent expects. The very word inclusion infers exclusion. 1. Parents do not send their children to school expecting them to be excluded. 2. No parent expects their child to be excluded from activities, from enjoying social experiences, from learning new and wonderful things. 3. No parent expects their child to be separated from their peers, placed at the back of the classroom or located elsewhere for hours or days or months or years. 4. No parent expects to be asked every year, will you be bringing your child to school the first day, Or is your child coming tomorrow? It's only a half day. 5. No parent expects their child to experience loneliness at school, to see on their faces the signs of frustration and disengagement, of social isolation and depression. 6. No parent expects their child to be taught by anyone other than the educator that has acquired appropriate education tools and training and support strategies, that embraces diversity in learning, and has developed the capacity to find ways to build on students' existing natural strengths and sense of self-worth. No parent expects anyone to know as much as they do about their child, for they are the keepers of the most knowledge about their child. It makes sense to include this resource. 8. No parent ever expects to have a child that others will consider to be different. 9. No parent enrolls their child in school, in life, without hoping for and expecting the best of them. 10. No parent expects to have to continuously fight for the same rights all other children get automatically. Parents will always be sending their children to school, expecting them to be included. Written by Cindy Frostad, a parent, educator, rights advocate, system design collaborator, EDM 2017, Harvard Graduate School of Education.
Ma voisine de ruelle est une bonne vivante, allumée et amoureuse de fado. Toutes nos discussions ont lieu par-dessus la clôture, elle dans la ruelle, moi dans ma cour arrière. Elle ne traverse jamais cette limite. Ce matin, c'est vendredi saint et elle me demande des nouvelles des enfants. Jeanne fait des sourires qui feraient pâlir dans n'importe quel top modèle. Non, je ne prononcerai pas le mot dégénératif aujourd'hui. Lou est en train d'apprendre l'alphabet et il est terriblement rapide, c'est à croire qu'il oublie d'être déficient. Marianne rit. Quand même, hein? Je ne sais pas comment vous faites. Vous avez une force hors du commun. Moi, je ne pourrais pas. Chère Marianne, dire qu'on a quelque chose de spécial, c'est comme sous-entendre que nous, on est fait pour ça. Ça rassure les gens de se dire ça parce que ça leur permet de croire qu'à eux, ça ne pourrait pas arriver, je crois. Mettons une chose au clair. Il n'y a pas deux types de parents, c'est-à-dire ceux qui sont prêts à vivre avec un enfant handicapé et ceux qui ne pourraient pas. Personne n'est préparé. Et ça arrive à n'importe qui, aléatoirement. Ce qu'il faut dire aussi, c'est que ces enfants-là, vois-tu, on ne les aime pas moins parce qu'ils sont handicapés. On les aime comme le parent moyen aime les siens, c'est-à-dire à se faire passer dessus par un train. Donc, on ne les abandonne pas, la plupart du temps. On accuse le choc, on tâche de ne pas couler, on s'adapte. C'est comme si tu te fais amputer une jambe, tu réapprends à marcher, parce qu'il te reste quand même une autre jambe, et un minimum de volonté de vivre. Ce n'est facile pour personne. Bien sûr, au quotidien, je gère. Je vais à tous les rendez-vous médicaux, j'amène les enfants en théâtre de marionnettes, je les inonde d'amour, je me lève la nuit au moindre bruit, je leur achète des légumes bio, je leur donne leurs médicaments à l'heure, je les console quand ils pleurent. Je me débrouille. Sauf que je perds patience, je crie, je suis inconstante, je me saoule, j'oublie la soupe que j'ai mise à chauffer sur la cuisinière jusqu'à ce que le chaudron se vide et se soude au rond de poêle. Je ne fais pas les exercices recommandés par la physiothérapeute ou l'orthophoniste. Je suis toujours trop fatiguée. Je n'amène quasiment jamais les enfants au parc. Je suis super ordinaire. Bref, on n'est pas des super-héros. Arrête.
I miss my cheek caressing her cheek, the surreal softness of her skin. I miss the way her smile gradually, slowly appeared on her face. I miss her super high-pitched sounds of joy. I miss my silly talking to her. I used to go, and she would answer me with her own language, and for a moment we would live in the same world, which was a magic and mind-blowingly beautiful place. I miss the weight of her hypotonic, limp body on my chest. I miss her lips nibbling my neck. I miss her light. I miss breastfeeding her when she was a baby and believing she was healthy. I miss this blissful blindness. I miss saying I have a daughter without having to add that she would be 8 and that she's forever 5, almost 6. Connecting with her felt like touching grace and diving into eternity, really.
Baby, I'll come back to you. Baby, I'll come back to you. You run off to the desert, try to make yourself small. I might do a little damage, but you always take my call, and I come in like a cannonball. I've been that way my whole life. Sweet as honeysuckle when you want a pocket knife. And if you keep coming, my hurricane, I might keep it at bay. I know you'll love me anyway. If I stand in the shadows when you say something true, well, I might try to argue, but baby, I'll come back to you. Baby, I'll come back to you. You stand in the great wide open, try to hear yourself think. I can learn to wait for you, ride it out with some peace, but I come in like a cannonball. I've been that way my whole life. Sweet as honeysuckle when you want a pocket knife. And if you keep coming, my hurricane, I might keep it at bay. I know you'll love me anyway. Baby, I'll come back to you. 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 Come back to you.
It's nice in the morning, oh, it's nice in the morning. I've got butter on my bread, I've got thoughts in my head. It's nice in the morning, oh, it's nice in the morning. I've got the sun on my toes, got the sun on my toes. Whatever this day may hold, let it hold me with you. It's nice in the morning, oh, it's nice in the morning, oh, the quiet is the king, the breeze it does sing. You're nice in the morning, oh, you're nice in the morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Welcome back from that body break. And the first impetus of this conference was Brenda and I talking about, sorry, I'm all emotional, but can we get moms from all over the country coming together and talking? And I found that panel incredibly moving, and certainly reached the goal that we had, one of the goals that we had for this conference. So thank you for your bravery and your willingness to share what's going on for you. Okay, welcome back from our body break. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, you'll find a link to speakers and to the schedule in the Zoom chat. We do have simultaneous translation, therefore you must choose your language preference, English or French, by selecting the interpretation option on your Zoom menu. And if you need any assistance for any of the accessibility offered here today, please drop a note into the chat and someone will assist you. Our next panel for today is a discussion about disability and health-related supports. So once again, there's so much that we could really talk about here, including costs for therapy, medical equipment, medical supplies, how child health outcomes are impacted when costs are a barrier to meeting healthcare needs, what role accessible homes and vehicles play in the social, emotional, physical, and financial health of the whole family. Ultimately, we're looking at where childhood disability and the lack of supports and that poverty piece that keeps coming up again and again, these financial challenges are affecting health outcomes. Today, we are fortunate to have with us Jennifer Bombush, who is a professor at the School of Nursing at the University of British Columbia. She is conducting research about the impact of public health measures on families and children with medical complexity, among myriad other things that she is researching and working with. And we have Dr. Olaf Kraus de Camargo, who is an associate professor at the Department of Pediatrics at McMaster University. He is co-director of the Can Child Center for Childhood Disability Research and a member of MacArt, which is the McMaster Autism Research Team. He practices as a developmental pediatrician in Hamilton, Ontario. A reminder, our moderator, Brenda Lenahan, is a mom with a young son of health complexities. She is the co-founder of BC Complex Kids Society and was appointed to the National Advisory Council on Early Learning and Childcare and the Minister's Advisory Council for Children and Youth with Support Needs in BC. Brenda, over to you.
Thank you, Amanda, and welcome, Jennifer and Olaf. Very happy to have you both here today. I'm just going to let you both set the tone and get us started. There is a huge umbrella discussion here, and it could go many ways, and let's see where it goes. We'll start with you, Dr. Olaf.
Oh, I thought ladies first. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
But I'm fine to start, and then if I can continue. Yeah. So my name is Olaf, and first of all, congratulations to this conference. It is really an amazing event, and I'm really moved, and it is. I think I never experienced an event like that or a conference like that. So congratulations, you really achieved a major thing here. So that's awesome. A bit to my background. So as you might hear, I have a German accent. So I was born in Germany, and I have a strange last name that is because I grew up in Brazil, and I studied medicine in Brazil, and experienced different types of poverties there as a physician, seeing patients I studied in a public university, and the students there and the residents mainly take care of people that cannot afford private healthcare, which is also existing there. And that leads me a bit to the things that I want to bring up, that comparison between public healthcare and private healthcare. So I had a good example there of these two tiers in the society and the tensions that it creates and the inequity it creates. And then I moved back to Germany and practiced for over 17 years in Germany in different places where there is a public healthcare system and a system of child developmental centers, which are called social pediatric centers in Germany. There are over 200 across the country. each of them with several physicians and specialists and therapists that provide care for children with disabilities. So that is, I would say, the Cadillac of services. And now I'm here in Canada for about 15 years. And in these 15 years, I have witnessed really a decay of services and expanding wait times for our patients. So for me to see a new patient, there's a wait list of 2 years. So you imagine if a child first starts presenting with any concerns about their development, they are usually around the age of 2 years, and then they are 4 before I can see them. And these 2 years are lost in what was mentioned in the previous panel for activities in early intervention and so on. What we noticed in the last couple of years with the pandemic was also, and that's just my clinical observation, maybe Jennifer has some more scientific data about that, but what I observe in the patients that I see is that there is a great disparity about how families could actually deal with that situation. So some families with financial means ended up buying several computers and tablets and were able to stay home and teach their kids. And I have children that actually did much better during the pandemic school-wise than it was before. And parents were questioning, well, he was so many years in school, never learned to read, and now he comes back and he's reading because we just were on him and we worked with him every day, and that's something he achieved in the pandemic and probably wouldn't have achieved if he just went to school. So it shows also the lack of supports that were already existing before the pandemic. And then there are families that completely broke down, and children with significant behavioral issues, not being able to get out and not getting any relief for the families. The issue of paid leave when children are sick or parents are sick is a significant issue, and we can maybe comment later on the different options that are in that regard. And I feel that a conference like what you're organizing, and we had the discussion in the preparation when we talked on Zoom, I think it is really important to come together as a country and as a group of people with a variety of conditions and disabilities and situations to really start asking for or fighting for supports that are necessary for everyone. And they will be, and we all might end up disabled at a certain point in our life and need these supports. Let's just think about the aging of the society and who will take care of all these elderly people. And so any system that we put in place will benefit everyone in Canada, not just a small group. And it's not such a small group, about 20% of the population that have any type of disability. So I think that conference, or this conference here, is a first step in that direction. But I'm also aware that it has been a topic that has been discussed over many, many years. And but maybe there is a critical mass now that can move things forward. So I'm hopeful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, hopefully we can move the dial. Actually, the next panel, we will have a group who's been advocating, and we'll speak a bit about the National Disability Insurance Scheme in Australia, looking at those kind of options. So it'll be interesting to hear and look at that. Jennifer, I should have started with you. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I was very happy to go second. And pleased to be on this panel with Dr. Olaf. And I'd also like to thank you, Brenda. And I know that on top of all the other hats you wear, organizing a conference of this magnitude is something that oftentimes people have a full-time staff to help with. So I just want to thank you so much. I know this probably took up a lot of your spoons, and hopefully tomorrow and the next little bit, you will have time to rest and recuperate. So I will just introduce myself and the kinds of work that I'm doing. I came to this world as someone who hadn't really thought a lot about disability until I had my daughter 20 years ago. And she has an ultra rare genetic difference. So we were really thrown into a new kind of world that we didn't know about. And also we were very alone because she had an ultra rare difference. And what her doctors would say is, you know, we're learning from her. And so we can't really tell you what the future will be. So we've spent the last 20 years navigating all the different systems and services, and certainly have a lot of that from a personal experience. And so as I was getting my PhD and starting to be a faculty member at UBC, I also realized that even though we're alone in a diagnosis, we share experiences with many other families, and our experiences are very consistent and similar. And so I started to do research about families of children with disabilities, and most particularly children with medical complexity, because that's our family's experience. And so these are children who spend a lot of time in hospital, have lots of specialists they need to see, they need a lot of assistance in their daily life, and are probably, you know, on the continuum of people with disabilities at that area where they're needing the most assistance and are most attached to services. And so I was doing this research before COVID happened, and then during the pandemic was fortunate to get some funding to continue to do it. And because there aren't a lot of us, children with medical complexity comprise about 1% of the pediatric population. We're doing a longitudinal qualitative study. So that means that we're interviewing families and also getting them to complete diaries about what their daily life is like. And they do that about once a month. And so I wanted to bring in some of the research we've been doing, because we have been also trying to capture some of those costs that families experience that a lot of people really don't think a lot about if they don't have a child with disabilities. And I think Dr. Olaf has already touched on a few, like even the inequities among families in terms of having access to the internet, having tablets, having computers, and all of that kind of technology. So we also see the added layer of the impact on families that live in rural and remote areas. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but to close off my introduction so we can get into the discussion, I just wanted to share one of the diary entries, a piece of a diary entry from one of the participants in our study. And so I'm going to read it out. And this is the mom of a teenage girl with medical complexity. And she wrote in her first diary entry, and this was a opportunity to write about whatever they wanted. There was no sort of guidelines. It was just about how you're feeling, what's really impacting you right now at this point in time. And she wrote, parents are expected to completely meet the day-to-day care needs of their child. For many parents of children with intense care needs, this prevents the parents from being able to work in any paid employment. The inability for a parent to work creates poverty or financial hardship for most families, and this has serious long-term effects on families' financial health and the ability for family to be in any financial position to help their medically complex children later in life. I have been unable to work for over a decade now, first being the primary caregiver for a palliative ill daughter, and in the last 2 years, needing to be the manager of her 24/7 care team, working more than 40 hours per week unpaid. I remain on call for my daughter's needs 24/7 with no relief. The amount of money that we currently spend, including the high amounts to meet our daughter's care and therapy needs, is higher than what my husband earns. And this is creating short-term hardship and significant long-term impacts. So I will leave it at that and turn it back to you, Brenda, so that we can have a discussion on these issues.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, and I mean, the hard thing for people to understand is that story you shared is in our demographic is a common story. It's always a little different, but it is the financial hardship, the instability, the poverty, and for some deep poverty is unavoidable in so many ways. It's the financial costs are high, and the barriers to employment are also very, very high. So I'm going to just share a question in to stimulate some more discussion, but the question is whether you could share some examples from either your clinical experience, Dr. Olaf, or lived experience and research on the day-to-day large and small out-of-pocket expenses that you're seeing that have an impact on health outcomes. And I'll let whoever would like to jump in. Olaf, you're muted there.
Sorry. I think there are two aspects to it. One is the expense itself, and we mentioned, I think Khadija mentioned that before, that she has to pay 25% of the wheelchair, and depending on the wheelchair, that a wheelchair can cost more than a car. So it's a significant amount of money. But what adds on to that is often the slowness in getting the assistive devices approved, get them delivered, get them adapted. So and that time where you do not have example wheelchair is time you lack opportunities to do other things. So this child cannot participate. That family cannot go out to do things that they want to do together, and that these are all aspects that come on top of just the money part. So I think we need to discuss not only the amount of money that it costs when you have a child with a disability, and I just tweeted out an article that I found, but it's from 2012. And in today's numbers, it would be about $40,000 a year over the lifetime of a person with a disability of extra costs from the regular living cost. That is one thing, but the other is, and that's what I heard also from the other parents before, there are so many different silos that determine things, and who pays what, and when does it get paid, and when does it get delivered. I think these are the major, and these are issues that can be solved without spending more money. These are administrative issues that don't cost anything. They are actually costing a lot of money now, usually the money of the family, because they cannot access things and they end up paying out of pocket. But there are a lot of things that people are entitled to have, but it's very difficult for them to get them. And I think that might be a first step, really, to organize systems in a different way so that this can be improved.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of that time, families are part of that. So they have to take the time to fill out the forms, work with the therapy team, go to the appointments, follow up to see what's happening, why they haven't got it yet, and apply for charity for the remainder if they can't afford it. And that time is also a barrier to employment. And it's a barrier to parenting, to just being able to be with your children. It's so true. Jennifer, do you want to speak into that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Olaf shared. In our study, we are collecting information about the monthly out-of-pocket expenses for families. And I think, these are all things, and I'll share some of them, but just keep in mind, these are all things that families with non-disabled children are able to typically spend on leisure activities, holidays, and we aren't even necessarily getting into how inaccessible all of that is. But these are things that people are paying for. And I think in Canada, what I find oftentimes is that people are shocked. People who aren't as involved with healthcare are really shocked about what you pay out of pocket. There's this idea that with a universal healthcare system, everything is covered, and that's in fact not true. And that in some cases, nothing is covered, or it's a partial payment on the part of the family. So the kinds of things that families have shared with us that they're paying for out of pocket are dental care, up to $150 a month, prescribed medications up to $200 a month, over-the-counter medications around $40 a month, medical equipment up to $700 a month, therapies up to $300 a month, and then other things people have been paying up to $1,200 a month for. And I think that a really huge thing that impacts a lot of families as their child grows are renovations to make their homes accessible. When our kids are little, it's easier to pick them up and move them around, but as they get bigger, they tend to need more supports. And so with our family, that situation really hit in 2013 when my daughter wasn't able to do stairs or walk very much anymore. And we needed to put a platform lift on our home, and found out that none of that is covered. And in order to be able to make our home even minimally accessible for her, the cost was about $20,000. And then we get into the whole issue of accessible vehicles, which new cost about $80,000. So the other thing that happens to families is their world gets smaller and smaller. You can either get into your house or you can't get into your house, or you have to leave your community because you have to find accessible housing. You can't go very many places because maybe you're reliant on public transit. And so because you cannot come up with that amount that you need for an accessible vehicle. And so these are all huge costs that I think a lot of people don't really give a lot of thought to, but are core to the healthcare and well-being of these families. The other thing that we learn from families, and one of the great things about research during COVID is instead of going to people's homes, we're doing it on Zoom. And I think a benefit of that is we have families from the Yukon participating. That wouldn't have really necessarily occurred to us before around how to recruit them. But for those families that live far away from our very centralized pediatric expertise, like if you live in British Columbia, you're going to Children's Hospital. That can mean multiple trips per year. Not all of those costs are not borne by the families. Some families have moved to rural areas because of a lower cost of living, and then they end up having to pay anyways to come and access healthcare, coming for multiple appointments because there's no care coordination or navigation. And one of the families really talked about how important it was to them that during the pandemic, for the very first time, one of the highly specialized teams traveled to northern BC. And she said it was life-changing because that meant that 4 times a year, I didn't have to pack up my family and travel to Vancouver for a brief appointment. It meant they came to us, and everybody who lives in our community was able to come to the city in that area and be able to see that team. Unfortunately, that's been something that's been carried on now that we are at a different place in the pandemic. I won't say it's over, as some people like to say. We're in a different place. Our families are certainly still dealing a lot with that place, keeping our children safe and healthy as much as we can. So I think that sometimes it's challenging the myths that people who are not part of this universe have around what is costing us and why, you know, we are sinking every day further into debt or poverty because these costs are endless.
Maybe just to add from what you mentioned now, remind me when a colleague of mine asked me last week, oh, I saw you were on the panel for this conference, and what do you think? What can we actually do? She's a social worker, I think. What can we actually do to help them? And I said, well, first thing, maybe stop charging parking fees for the people that come to a hospital. It's $20 to park, and then they have maybe half an hour consult. And so many parents were so happy that they could consult via Zoom now. And our colleague Peter Rosenbaum, he co-authored, I think, an article that says, let's not get back to normal, like to the times before. Let's use what we learned during the pandemic and what reduced barriers for families and keep these things because they are so important.
Exactly. Like the parking was one that during the pandemic, there was no charge for parking at BC Children's Hospital, and that has resumed. But the thing that also, when you first mentioned that specific thing to me, is that then parents are choosing virtual care, which of course is good and convenient, but we don't want parents to choose virtual care all the time if it means they're not coming in to see you because of the cost of parking. That's a problem.
I mentioned, I make the comparison, the different casinos here in Ontario are regulated by the provincial government. You don't pay parking for visiting a casino, so you could charge there and make parking in hospitals free.
There we go. Solutions. And yes, indeed, like the piece, I live remotely here actually, and the virtual care has also, you know, if you balance the virtual with in person, it reduces, we do have a lot of our travel costs paid for in BC, but we have to take time off of our work to travel, which is a reason that many of us can't work jobs. So if we can do more virtual appointments, it allows us to also stay in our communities more. And those outreach teams, as Jennifer was mentioning, those are also beneficial for the same reasons. Did anyone want to bring anything else into this piece of the discussion?
I think I'll just add to one of the other aspects of care that it's kind of raised its head here in BC a little bit over the last few weeks is around allied health therapies. And again, I think a lot of people are under the impression that physio and occupational therapy and speech therapy are things that are covered under our healthcare system and not realizing that they're not. And I'll add psychologists to that because we know mental health is so key in our families, and many of our families would benefit from accessing psychologists. And so in British Columbia, and Brenda knows this, our government recently increased the amount of their copay for therapists. And what happened there was that some providers have decided then to increase their fees for service. And so the net costs that families are experiencing from those aren't changing. And, you know, I do advocate therapists should be paid for their time, as, you know, I'm not suggesting we should be underpaying therapists, but in thinking through that policy change, obviously there was no one at the table to say, hey, what happens if the therapists then increase their fees? The families are still going to be paying the same amount for their copay. And a lot of this, a lot of these programs that are set up to support our families include a copay component. And so in British Columbia, for example, with our respite care while my daughter was growing up, there was a copay component for families. And, you know, even sometimes the biases that providers and different people in the world have about families of children with disabilities, when I would raise this as an issue, they would, you know, the answer would really be, you should be grateful for this program and families should pay a bit so you know that it's worthwhile. And it's just shocking to think like some of those attitudes are so ingrained that, yeah, you should be paying extra because you have a child with disabilities. And the ableism that is just so prevalent across all parts of our society that really needs to be addressed. But I think particularly as policy changes are coming into play, to be able to have people with lived experience present to say, but what if? Because we know all those things are going to happen, but maybe they're not being thought through by the people who are making the changes who don't share our experiences.
Absolutely.
I think you're being very benevolent. I think they are thought through and they know very well how a market works.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise.
Actually, to share a little piece of that too, it goes back to what you said, Dr. Olaf, about private versus public. So a piece of that, from what I've seen anecdotally, a lot of the providers did increase their rates when that happened. A lot of them needed to. Their costs have risen, but they kept the cost so that it was still going to be paid by government, and the parent wouldn't have to pay out of pocket. But the one provider who seems to have done something very unethical is a big private company that is been given a contract here as well. They do direct funding for parents, but also a private contract. And I think we have to be really careful of that when we look at building new systems, what it looks like to let those, it's not just private providers are one thing, for profit is where the problem comes in. It's for profit healthcare. That's what's starting to happen. And I think we should be mindful of that in the system. Absolutely.
And sorry, Brenda, I would just jump in to add, I think that people also who think the only consequence of these situations is poverty or financial issues. There's a study that came out in the last week from the US that showed that even among a group of mothers of children with disabilities, it was those who were living in poverty who had worse mental health outcomes. So as we push families further into poverty, we're seeing those worsening mental health outcomes for them as well. So this isn't something that just impacts your bank account. It's something that impacts your whole person. And so finding ways to support families so that they're not getting deeper and deeper into debt and poverty over time is something that we really need to be addressing. Hence this conference you put together for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many layers to it. I wanted to ask, sort of to get close. Where are we at time-wise there? Sorry. I wanted to ask what you see as the broader societal and systemic changes. You just spoke to one there, Jennifer, that need to happen provincially or federally to ensure all children and families have equitable health support. Do you see a path forward, or do you see other jurisdictions that we should look to? Whoever wants to jump in.
I guess I'll just jump in with a couple of the things. I think that during the pandemic, the Canadian caregiver benefit was introduced for people who became caregivers during the pandemic, and then they would receive a monthly payment similar to CERB. And a lot of our families experienced was that they were already in that situation, and so they didn't qualify for that program. So I think programs like getting a tax refund is not necessarily what's helping families, but having money in their bank account that they can actually freely use, that doesn't have a bunch of constraints on it, as our systems currently are, I think is one key thing that we need to introduce. The other study that I want to talk about that came out recently and is being shared among families and providers is from Colorado, where with direct funded home care, they were able to hire parents as their child's home health care aide and do a comparison between the outcomes for parents and the outcomes when you hired someone who is not part of your family. Now, when I started doing caregiving research 20 years ago, we couldn't even talk about that because people said, how dare you suggest that family members be paid, or that we are compelling them to do this unpaid work. But I think that things are really shifting. During the pandemic, we saw huge impacts on the workforce. Families simply can't find people to hire. And the Canadian Caregiving Association just came out with a report this past week, and it showed that in British Columbia alone, unpaid caregivers are supplementing our system for about $8 billion a year. So what we've seen is the system take advantage of that kind of idea that we shouldn't be directly paying people. What we saw from families was that during COVID, as we had more flexibility on how to spend things like respite dollars, people were like gaining the kinds of supports that they needed, and it became much more family centered. So when we talk about family centered supports, that financial flexibility also helped with that. So I think these are the things that we need to be thinking about. They exist in pockets, but if we listen to families, they need more money, then they need more flexibility in how they spend that money. And we need to have a little bit more trust that families know what to do and what's best for their situation. So I guess that would be where I would see we really need to change those systems and structures to begin to address this issue. And I'll pop the information about that study in Colorado into the chat in case anyone wants to take a look.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, it's been really great to see that research come to light. And there's a movement happening in the US around that family caregiver pay for other states. And there's a movement in Canada starting as well around caregivers and care supports. Yeah, would you like to share into that at all, Dr. Olaf?
Yeah, I think first of all, the caregiving aspect, what I continue linked to what happens in Germany, and there's in general now a discussion in society that and that society is getting older and more people getting into pension age, and then there are mothers, including my own, that never worked, and then if their partner dies, their pension suddenly is reduced because they didn't pay into a pension, but they raised 3 kids and they supported a grandchild with a disability and so on, and nothing of that is counted. So there is a discussion that care work needs to be counted as work. It is work, and it needs to be recognized as such. So that is one aspect. The other was about paid leave, and that's what we saw also during COVID. And I can also share a study. There's a huge variety around the world how paid leave is managed. And we had this discussion recently with our own fellows who are specializing in developmental pediatrics. And the supervisor of the fellows asked, oh, how should we manage if they are sick, and how long can they stay away? And I said, well, if we are focusing on the well-being of children and their development, we should lead by example. Let's have a look what other countries do. And again, there are countries who give a paid leave for over a month of time in the year, or give a paid leave for every child that is ill during the time. Or if it's a single parent, then they get double the paid leave because they are taking care alone and they cannot spread it with two parents and so on. So I think these are all important aspects that need to be included. And I saw on the graph that Kelly is doing, putting it, that's a medical need. And I would suggest that we not focus on one sector, because these are needs that go across sectors. We talked a lot about education, we talked about welfare, we talked about health. And the danger that I see is every time that we address something towards one ministry or one silo, that also allows an exclusion discussion. Okay, you don't qualify because this is just a social situation that you're going through. That's not due to the cerebral palsy of your child, or that's not due to autism. That's due to where you're living, or that's you're just living far away. That's your problem. You have to pay for that travel. No, it is not that. Like that, accessibility needs to be available for everyone. And I think these aspects are. And I saw that, for example, in Finland, they joined the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Social Services into one ministry. And you get supports based on your needs, and doesn't matter if that need is medical or social. You have a need. You're a citizen, and you are valued by the public and by the country, and you need a need and you get help. And it shouldn't be a discussion, okay, where should that come from? So I think these are ideas we worth discussing and going deeper into. Okay, how can we organize our system of support, or the systems of support, in being really efficient in how they provide help?
Yeah, that's a great discussion to have. The cross-ministry challenges and the gaps fall right between those ministries. And it's interesting how, in BC we have somebody in the health system will write a letter of justification for a wheelchair, but it's the family and children, the Ministry for Family and Children, that is supplying that chair without any medical support. And they're able to deny those requests. And it's a real issue. Absolutely. We need to have a closer look at that and look to other jurisdictions, like I think you said it was Finland.
Yeah.
Interesting. Jennifer, we're getting close to wrapping up here. So if you want to speak into that a bit, and we'll,
I think for sure breaking down those silos. And I think when I saw the drawing that's happening, just, that classic picture of falling through the cracks. And I think we used to think about that happening more during transitions between pediatric and adult health services, but it's happening all the time throughout the life course of a child with disabilities and their families. And I think that idea of looking at the whole person, I know that my daughter Eleanor has about 24 medical diagnoses, and we have, some parts of the system that deal with autism, some that deal with intellectual disability, some that deal with the medical complexity, but there's nothing that really covers everything. And so we find ourselves falling through multiple cracks because we don't have a system that was built around this particular population. And I think Dr. Olaf mentioned at the outset about 20% of the population is disabled. And I think, with improved medical care, improved social care, we're seeing a larger group of children with disabilities growing and living into adulthood as well. And so, we don't want people stuck in those cracks in the system forever. And we need to start paving over and making sure they don't exist. And part of that is breaking down those silos and understanding that people are whole people. And it's not medical care over here, education over here, social care over here. There's a wholeness to that we need to address in our policies and our programs and in our funding models.
Absolutely agreed. Thank you both. There's so much expertise here, and there's so much we could talk about. I mean, there's big pieces. There's the care supports, there's the income supports, and then all the pieces we talked about today that people just don't see. So it's great to really have this conversation and try to bring it to light. And I hope that what happens from here, I really do hope that we can come together and that both of you will be a part of it and have some have an ongoing conversation and bring more people into it and see if we can make some good change. Thank you
Definitely. Have a
both
nice
so
day.
much for
Thank you.
being here and for the work that you both do. Appreciated.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. We're going to transition to Amanda Fenton, I believe.
You are correct. This is Amanda Fenton speaking, everyone. Thank you so much to all of the panelists so far today, as well as all of you who are sitting and listening and watching and taking this all in. We really do believe that you're part of this conversation too, in this unique Zoom space that we're in together. We do want to pause and just again, share that Menti link in the Zoom chat. I'll do that one more time for you. Actually, I'm going to screen share first, just so in case you haven't made your way over there yet, just to show you what it looks like. I'll repost the link in just a moment, but we just would really love to hear your contributions to this latest panel discussion. What do you want to add to this discussion about disability and health-related supports? What's important to you? What do you experience? Maybe is there something that you didn't hear in the conversation that you want to lift up and highlight for us? Was there something that really resonated for you? Just an opportunity to be able to gather your voice, your contribution in. So I'm going to paste that link one more time into the Zoom chat. Your contributions are anonymous, so we don't know who contributes what. But they will be visible to us, and we're able to save them and be able to go through them afterwards. If Menti isn't working great for you for whatever reason, you can also use the Zoom chat. We'll make sure that we, collect it all together. But I'm going to host just a couple of minutes of quiet, give you a chance to provide some of those contributions in, and then I'll read a few out so we can hear what the big room is thinking. So a couple of minutes of quiet while we Menti and type away. Lovely. If you are still typing or speaking and it's coming in through Menti or the Zoom chat, please continue to do that. I just want to read in a couple of contributions before we transition. So here are a few that are coming into the Menti. I live in a remote community in BC. It is assumed that everyone drives or has access to a vehicle. The program that Brenda speaks of it is a prime example, and airfares are discounted at just 10% at the premium. Another comment about, while fully appreciating the idea of paid caregivers for parents and family, I've also heard many parents, including panel members, that would prefer to just be parents. And so looking at how can there be better investment in investing in paid caregivers from community, increasing wages, having more access to training, standards of care would allow families to access the supports. Lots more there. And just echoing again the piece about parents not able to just be parents. Lots coming in through the Menti. I can't read them all out. I will also want to just share a little bit from the chat as well. Just recognizing the impact on siblings. Also, perhaps we should be thinking in terms of a living wage for families who are providing informal caregiving to their child with a disability. Yeah, lots arriving in. We so value your contributions into this discussion. Where's my pal Kelly? Are you off screen there, Chiithamka? Do you want to give a wave? Is there like one thing that's really popped for you that you'd love to share just to bring your graphic forward before we move into a break? I know it's unfair for me to ask one thing, but what's really jamming for you over there?
Yeah, I think because I get to speak to it, I kind of try to speak to what's in between what I'm hearing. I think that's part of the gift. But all along the bottom of this is a list of the things that most of these parents and families have to consider before even trying to get out a door, before trying to get anywhere. And the list is social isolation, judgment from others, energy to co-regulate with your child in order to leave the house or even to get out the door, advocacy and activism, fighting racism and other barriers, English and language barriers. We heard that yesterday as well. Just plain language, access to information, inability to work, accessible housing, transport, care, education, the constant filling out of forms and application. And so I lift that up just to say as well, I'm hearing all of these parents who are writing books and have PhDs and or just getting out the door. So my lift up is to my fellow parents, where this list is also my list on the day, and to get here today. This was my list in so many ways, the co-regulation and making sure so many things are okay. I just have so much admiration, so much. There are no deficits here. There are only superpowers in these parents and in these children, in unseen things that are happening just to get here and just to get out the door and just to show up each day. And so that's what resonates for me. And it's less about what's in the chart and more about what's in my heart. So thank you. Sorry, make you cry, Amanda.
Oh, every time, Kelly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope all of you with us here today just see some part of your life, your thoughts, your ideas reflected in what's unfolding on the chart, knowing that it's impossible to capture such a rich tapestry, in one thing, in one comment either. So thank you for that so much. I'm going to welcome the incredible Alo, Amanda Lockitch, back to introduce our break. It's time for a break. It's time for some movement. We got a nice 20 minutes of pause and movement here. So Alo, over to you, my friend.
Thank you. It is a super weepy day for me with these panels. And I was all together until I heard Kelly, and, chart to heart, I'm right there with you. Yeah. We now have another body break so people can decompress a little bit, have some time to get a drink, go to the washroom, but we will be watching a body movement break from Luca Patuelli, aka Lazy Legs. He is the co-chair of Disability Without Poverty. Luca and his Ill Abilities crew are performing right now as we speak in their No Limits, No Excuses show at the Providence Performing Center. And next month, Luca is the head judge for the next Breaking for Gold International Olympic qualifiers in Montreal. So take some time to move your body with Luca. Thanks, Kyra.
Hello, bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Luca Lazy Legs Patuelli. I am a professional dancer, motivational entertainer, dance educator, the founder of the Ill Abilities International Dance Crew, and I am a co-chair for the Disability Without Poverty movement. I want to thank you all for participating in today's conference. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde qui a participé dans la conférence aujourd'hui. Maintenant, on fait une petite pause de mouvement et musique. Alors, we're going to do a little break with some music and movement just to get everyone just to change that energy going. So at this moment, I'd like to invite everyone to take some space around your rooms. You can stay seated, you can stand, whatever feels comfortable. However, just make sure that within your vicinity that you're not stepping on any objects, or that if you are going to be moving your arms around, that you're not going to knock anything over. En ce moment, j'aimerais inviter à tout le monde de faire attention de l'espace autour de vous. La sécurité, c'est la chose plus importante parce qu'on va bouger un peu sur la musique. Puis j'aimerais juste assurer que vous n'avez pas des choses que vous pouvez frapper avec vos bras ou peut-être marcher sur une crayon, quelque chose comme ça pour vous déstabiliser. La chose plus importante, c'est votre sécurité. Alors en ce moment, j'aimerais vous inviter à prendre 1 seconde pour juste bouger autour de vous et assurer que votre espace c'est sécure. In this moment, I'd like to give you all a couple seconds just to make sure that the space around you is safe and secure. Great. So now what we're going to do is a little bit of a warm-up. I'm going to put some music on and I'm going to ask you all to follow me. However, you also have the ability to just dance to the music and dance however you like. The most important thing about dance is that it comes from here, it comes from your heart. If your heart is beating, you're creating a rhythm within your body, and it's the slightest movement that makes the greatest difference. Often, we get intimidated when we watch dancers because we see their movement and their technique, and we think that dance is all about technique. However, it's really all about just moving freely. So if you like the music and you like the rhythm, just move to the rhythm and move to the beat. However you feel comfortable, if it makes you feel good, then that's all that matters. En ce moment, j'aimerais mettre un peu de musique. Je vais demander que vous allez répéter les mêmes mouvements que moi je fais. Par contre, si vous ne voulez pas répéter les mêmes mouvements et puis vous allez juste danser sur la musique, c'est votre moment à danser librement. La danse, c'est toute l'expression de soi-même. Et si votre cœur y bat, on crée un rythme avec nos corps. Puis c'est le petit mouvement qui fait la plus grande différence dans une performance. Êtes-vous prêts? Parfait. Alors avant que je mette la musique, j'aimerais que tout le monde prenne 3 grands respires. We're going to take 3 big deep breaths as a group. So we're going to inhale, smell those flowers. Exhale and blow out those candles. On respire. On expire. One more time. And exhale. So at this moment, we're just going to move our shoulders and go up, down. Say maybe. And now we're going to go one shoulder at a time. We go up, down. Je lève mes épaules une à la fois. I'm lifting my shoulders one at a time to the rhythm. We're going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey! bobbing our head to the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, okay. And now we're just gonna say yes with the head. Are we having a great time today at the conference? Yeah. We're gonna say yes with the head. And now we're gonna say no with the head. I'm like, yo, no with the head. We want this conference to end. No. Good. Now we're gonna do a full circle with the head. Yeah. Nice job, everyone. And turn the other way. Stop. Now we're gonna just bob our head to the feet, but we're gonna bring our shoulders into it. So bob that head. Hey, hey, yeah. Hey, good. Okay. Now we're gonna try to lift our arms up as high as we can. And we're gonna bring our arms up as high as we can. Good. And we're gonna wiggle those fingers. And we're gonna bring one arm at a time and go up. We're gonna lift one arm up in the air and we'll lift the other one up. One arm at a time. À la fois. Hey, hey, yes. Hey, good. And now we're gonna lift both our arms up in the air and we're gonna cross our arms in front of us like an X. With our arms on top of X avec les bras. On amène les bras dans l'air. Hey, yes. Nice. C'est bon tout le monde. Good. Okay. And now we're going to reach our arms up to the side. Reach. And you look. Good. And if you can, we're going to circle our arms to the side. Circle those arms. Yes. Hey. C'est bon, tout le monde. And now we're going to put our arms in front of us. We're going to keep our arms straight. And we're going to just cross our arms in an X like this. But we're always going to our head or our body to the rhythm. Hey. And we go fast. Nice. Good. And slow motion. Hey, hey, good. Just shake off those arms. Just shake. Good. But keep that groove going, everyone. Keep that groove going. Hey, nice. Now, if we can, we're gonna march in place. So if you stay seated, we're just gonna lift our legs. Hey, and if you want, we can lift our arms up from the side. Yes. Nice. Good job, everyone. I want you all to run in place. Run. And we're gonna slow down in slow motion. And just gonna shake one off. And we're gonna shake one arm. And we're gonna shake one leg. And we're gonna shake the other leg. And we're gonna shake our whole body. Good. And we're gonna take one big deep breath. And exhale. Just again. Bob your head to the rhythm. Right now we can do a little bit of a dance move, everyone all together. We're gonna put both our hands to one side and we're gonna reach back to the middle and then push to the other side. Here we go. 4, 5, 6, 7. Hey! Nice! Good. And now, in the middle, cross your arms, try to close, open, close, open, close. Hey! Yes! Good job. Oh! Nice. And now we can put our hands on our knees. everyone. That was amazing. How's everyone feeling right now? Thumbs up? Good. Now I want everyone to take one big deep breath. On va faire un grand respire. And exhale. Just shake up. Remember, dance is something that everyone has the ability to do. It's really the slightest movement that makes the greatest difference in a performance. La danse, c'est une activité que tout le monde est capable de faire, peu importe notre condition, parce que c'est vraiment le petit mouvement qui fait la plus grande différence dans les performances. En ce moment, j'aimerais partager une vidéo de mon solo où vous pouvez voir comment moi je me suis adapté pour transformer ma vie en danse. At this moment, I'd like to share a video of one of my new solo videos so you can see how I've transformed my life to pursue my passion as a professional dancer.
Je m'appelle Luca Lazy Legs Petwali. J'ai 37 ans et je suis une danseur professionnel. I have a strong upper body and a slim, weak lower body. Dans ma routine quotidienne, j'utilise des béquilles, des orthèses et un fauteuil roulant pour me déplacer. Tout au long de cette vidéo, j'ai dansé dans plusieurs lieux intérieurs et extérieurs à Montréal. To express myself, I will be performing a variety of movements that are energetic, poetic, acrobatic, and unique with the assistance of my crutches, wheelchair, and the floor. Caché en nous, hidden within us, que nous en soyons conscients ou non, la danse est présente. La danse peut nous transformer et avoir un impact positif sur le monde. Dance is one of the few activities that truly brings people together, no matter the age, race, gender, language, or ability. It is the celebration of humanity at its finest. Through dance, we open ourselves up to the world and feel a sense of belonging. La danse nous offre des possibilités illimitées de nous exprimer de plusieurs façons. Elles nous permettent de bouger même avec les mouvements les plus simples pour créer une complexité. La beauté de la danse ne vient pas seulement du mouvement, mais du processus de création du mouvement lorsque nous nous permettrons d'être vulnérables et authentiques. Dance gives us the ability to believe in ourselves, and it is in those moments that we discover and expand our true physical, emotional, and spiritual potential. When we dance, we free ourselves from the worries and stresses of the world because we are connected to the present moment. Nous relâchons les tensions que nous pourrions avoir et créons notre chemin vers la croissance. La danse n'est pas une question de perfection. It's not about perfection. C'est une façon de bouger pour se sentir libre. To feel free.
Cette vidéo, intitulée Transformation, est produite par le regroupement québécois de la danse et Luca Lazy Legs Petwali. It features Luca's words and movement, and it is directed by Kayla Jeanson, with camera work by Kayla and AJ Korkidakis. La musique est Heaven's Anthem par Skygaze. L'équipe de production est composée de Nadine Meloir, Camille Pilava et Sarah Johnston. Merci à tous.
So that was one of my newest solo videos, just to show you all what dance means to me and how I move. You see, I think that dance is something that is a universal language that really has that ability to bring everyone together. And it's part of the reason why I created an international dance group called Ill Abilities. Ill Abilities is a play on words. You see, ill literally means sick, but in the hip hop world, it means amazing and incredible. So Ill Abilities is all about amazing and incredible abilities. And what Ill Abilities is it's an international dance group comprised of 8 dancers representing 7 different countries. Each dancer actually has a completely different disability, but each dancer is considered to be some of the world's best b-boys. And we come together when we have the opportunity to perform in events, festivals, dance competitions, and we share a simple message together. And this message is something that's helped us overcome a lot of challenging moments throughout our lives. This message is no excuses, no limits. En français, le message, c'est pas d'excuses, pas de limites. Pour nous, qu'est-ce que pas d'excuses, pas de limites? Ça veut dire, c'est on croit que dans la vie, tout est possible. C'est le minute qu'on crée une excuse et on se dit qu'on n'est pas capable de faire quelque chose sans essayer. C'est là où on crée une limitation et c'est là où on crée une barrière. See, no excuses, no limits is about giving things a try, trying your best, and taking that time to learn to do things your own way. Just because something is different, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Take that time to do that one thing your way. You're going to start learning to believe in yourself. Once you start learning to believe in yourself, you'll have that confidence to put yourself out there. And once you have that confidence to put yourself out there, the community around you will encourage you. And that's when you'll recognize that the possibilities are limitless. At this moment, I'd like to share a video with you all, with my dance crew, Ill Abilities, so you can see how these other dancers have transformed their life to pursue their passions.
All right, thank you and welcome back from our break. Thanks, Luca, for giving that to us for our body breaks yesterday and today. Luca has such a positive, optimistic, lovely vibe that it's hard not to smile. It's hard not to move your body when he's around because he's moving his body all the time. But we wanted to welcome you back. And for those of you who are just joining us, a reminder for everyone else as well, that we have simultaneous translation today. So you must pick a language, English or French, by selecting the interpretation option on your Zoom menu. And if you need any assistance for today, please just drop a note in the chat and one of us will get back to you. So this brings us to the last panel of the conference, and wow, it has gone fast. Brenda and I were discussing how, you know, months and months of planning go by in a few quick hours, and then you have that, you know, after crash of what do we do now? But we'll talk about next steps a little later. Our last panel is a little bit different again. We're going to be learning from what's happening in other jurisdictions and potential policy innovations. So we want to look at what is working well in other jurisdictions, what policy recommendations we can learn from other jurisdictions, both inside and outside of Canada, that could contribute to a more inclusive and equitable future for the health and well-being of all disabled children living in Canada. This panel is again organized slightly differently. Like our first panel yesterday, we've divided this into 3 different segments. So it will begin with a conversation between our moderator, Brenda Lenehan, and Anouk Linwet-Turgeon. Okay, good. I got the thumbs up. And I also just wanted to say, Anouk, without crying, thank you for that beautiful tribute to your daughter that you shared with us all. Anouk is a mother to Eli, who lives with Down syndrome, and Lassa, who died from a very rare genetic progressive disease in 2019 at the age of 5. Her children inspired her to advocacy, which has led to financial support for families with severely disabled children in the creation of the Supplement for Handicapped Children Requiring Exceptional Care in Quebec in 2016. And, you know, to throw another hat into the ring, her first novel was published in 2021. Brenda is, again, a mom to a young son with health complexities and the co-founder of BC Complex Kids Society. And she is appointed to the National Advisory Council on Early Learning and Childcare and the Minister's Advisory Council for Children and Youth with Support Needs in BC. And I look forward to a riveting, and I will probably start crying again, conversation between the two of you.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Anouk, for being here. Anouk and I think we met at a very early Disability Without Poverty event few years ago now anyway. And I'm really happy to be here chatting with you today. Thank you for joining us. And we wanted to learn a little bit about your family, your experience, and how it came to be that you advocated with other parents for this benefit that was came to fruition, and we just want to learn a bit more about what that benefit looks like after. But first, maybe just starting with your experience and the advocacy piece.
Yes.
Thanks, Anouk.
Well, thanks for having me. And I prepared a couple of notes to tell you a little bit more about how it started, how it happened, and how it was possible to create this supplement for exceptional children that we have here in Quebec. So, as Amanda said, I had 2 children, and back in 2014, another mother, Marilyn Picard, she was actually the ignition point of this small group of mothers, Parents Jusqu'au Bout, who came together. She published a post back then where she had just resuscitated her daughter on the lounge couch after a severe seizure episode. And so she described in this post the complex care her daughter required every day. And so it felt a lot like my life. And so we eventually, this post was shared like more or less 10,000 times. It really became viral. And so we connected, a couple of us connected with Marilyn, and Parents Jusqu'au Bout was born. So Parents Jusqu'au Bout could be translated like maybe parents until the end, but it's like an approximate translation. Anyway, so we came together, a very small group of 4 very motivated mothers. We had no experience whatsoever with advocacy of any sort. We had never met a politician before in person, no lobbying experience, no media skills, no nothing, just 4 random mothers. Very fiercely convinced that families like ours deserved better financial support. So what was our main argument? Well, quite simple. Natural families with a disabled child used to get about, for financial support, used to get about altogether $300 and something a month if we combine provincial and federal supplements or benefits, and versus a foster family, you know, who would accept to take care, to be the caregiver of a severely disabled child like the ones we have, would get approximately $40,000 a year. So these numbers struck people's minds. You know, $4,000 a year for a family, for the natural family, versus $40,000 a year for a foster family. And a lot of families did actually have to give away their children in foster families, and they were writing to us, and it was absolutely heart-wrenching to read all these stories. And so we started telling our stories. We started, you know, and some journalists, plural, started paying attention. And we were in every radio show, TV show that we could be on, but we also tried to meet our local MPs. Opposition parties in Quebec started also to pay attention and supporting us and challenging the government at the Quebec National Assembly. More and more parents followed our Facebook page, up to 15,000 followers at the time, and we encouraged every parent of a disabled child to speak up and call on their local newspaper, radio stations, whatever. So there were several parents who talked to the media, and there was also the political scene that we tried to talk to. Anyway. And so there was sort of a buildup, gradually, sort of a momentum at some point, because at the beginning, we didn't have much hope. You know, we were told by one of our local MPs that we would never get anything, and that it was, you know, useless and hopeless to try to get anything more than what we already had. The health minister ignored us all he could. But then a couple of months later, he couldn't ignore us anymore. So they created an interdepartmental committee, and well, to make us feel important, I guess, or to make us shut up, I don't know. But we said thank you, but that won't do it. That's not enough, and things have to move on faster. You know, parents, you know, families are torn apart because parents have to give away their children to foster care. It doesn't make any sense. You know, we insisted that our houses are on fire. We can't wait for some committee to analyze and, you know, agonize on our situations. So, three major helpers. First, Maître Ménard, who's a lawyer in Quebec, like #1 lawyer in health issues. He's sometimes he takes pro bono cases when he's sure it will, you know, he will win. And he had such a terrific success rate that the government is scared of him. So we weren't at the point where he accepted to take the case. He was only studying the, you know, possibility of it. But in some interview, we just dropped that we were, you know, in contact with his cabinet. And so we'll never know if that has anything to do with the fact that we finally got to meet the health minister. But anyway, just, you know, mentioning, thanks to Maître Ménard. Also, we met Mathieu Santerre, who's a PR expert and who used to be the president of the Lobbyists Association in Quebec. So he offered his services pro bono, totally. And we really were, you know, we were already good, but with him, we became like all of a sudden experts in PR. So we, well, he actually helped us secure a meeting with the health minister and prepare for it. So thanks to Matthew also. So with all this media attention and political attention also, we ended up being invited at the most listened to talk show in Quebec, TV, Tout le monde en parle. So, and they had invited the health minister on the set. So in front of 2 million people listening to him live, he just couldn't refuse to meet with us. And he did. So that's basically what happened. So exactly 3 months after we were on that TV set, the new supplement was created, which is around $1,000 a month, plus the basic supplement. It's around $1,300 a month for eligible families. So it did happen after only 16 months of fierce fight. I call it a near miracle because I didn't believe it would happen, really, but it did. And one last word, actually, I want to stress that the key to our success, according to my non-scientific self, is that we had an organic way of working together. You know, it was only the 4 of us, but we had no organizational chart. We had no structured plan, no tasks, no lists of tasks. We acted, very instinctively, actually, very naturally. Most importantly, we had no ego in this, it wasn't about me or her being in the TV or whatever. Mm-hmm. We had one message, a clear focus, unwavering willpower and sense of purpose. This had to happen. So it did, and it was life-changing for a lot of families. This being said, there's no, it's not perfect. The eligibility criteria are absolutely insane. I mean, I got, and there are 2 tiers, I got tier 1 for my daughter. I got tier 2 for my son, but I can't explain exactly how it happened because it's too complicated. And it's a 13 pages form to fill out, so unfortunately it's not like easy to get, but at least it's out there and it's better than what we had or didn't have before.
Absolutely. Amazing advocacy work too. It's amazing that within 3 months of that conversation it was created. That's incredible. I know it took longer than that, the advocacy, but again, it happened fast, and it sounds like a lot of it had to do with getting society to see families, and that is definitely it can be tough. I mean, in BC, we're trying to push right now on advocacy around home care supports, and the interest isn't always there. So it's great also that you found that key and that door in to the consciousness of society. It's
it was several things happening at the same time, and part of that is absolutely not we had no control over, but
circumstances. Beautiful. So that support now, so for a lot of families, is close to $1,000 a month, and those who are eligible, but like you said, there's still some barriers. And I wanted to also note that as you mentioned before to me, that there's still a lot of barriers in the other supports in Quebec. So it's not that this was the final gap to be filled either. There's a lot of other systemic issues that it's not the whole package. It doesn't solve everything for everybody, but an incredible piece that supports many families, I'm sure, in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, the system here is not perfect at all. Don't move to Quebec, just
no. But what the thing that we need to learn here is that there's good things happening in other jurisdictions, and if we can pull those good things across the country for other families, we might, you know, we might see some change that is positive for families.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anouk, and thank you also for sharing your beautiful work. Your reading from your book and your beautiful video with your daughter is incredible, and we really appreciate you sharing that with us, and for being here, and for spreading the word in Quebec, and just being amazing. We really appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me, really. Well, let's hope for some revolution.
Yeah, well, we might have to create that revolution. Unfortunately, that was the other piece we were going to talk about, but we don't have too much more time, but just that burden of advocacy on families, the fact that you needed to take that time, the fact that I and so many other parents take so much of our time that we don't have because we see the injustice. And we really need allies. We need healthcare professionals. We need others to do this work with us and for us. And yeah, we need things to move in a better way towards change. It can't be all on our already burdened shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you, Anouk. We're going to say goodbye and move on to the next discussion.
Yeah, thank you to Anouk and to you, Brenda. And I think I'm sensing, I'm hoping a cross-country gathering of mothers or parents to make this movement really not just provincially, but what can we do broader that speaks to our own provinces. Next, we have Hubert Van Nykirk, who is Vice Chair for Every Canadian Counts, which advocates for a publicly funded national disability insurance plan for all persons with long-term and chronic disabilities. For 19 years, he served as a member at large and has been president and past president of the Ontario Association for Developmental Education. Joining Hubert is Catherine McGilvray. Catherine is a physiotherapist who primarily works in the pediatric disability area of care since graduating from the University of Queensland in 2016. She worked in Australia when the National Disability Insurance Scheme, the NDIS, was rolled out and saw firsthand the positive impacts this program had on families. She's a volunteer with Every Canadian Counts, and Brenda will likely pop in at the end of the presentation to ask a question or two of you both. Over to you.
Hello, am I working? Thank you. So yes, my name is Hubert Van Nykirk. I am the Vice Chair of Every Canadian Counts, ECC. It's a nonprofit, volunteer-led organization consisting of disabled and non-disabled persons. Among other things, I am a retired special education specialist teacher where I taught students with pretty much all disabilities, including medically fragile, where students would pass on a regular basis. ECC is advocating for a publicly funded national disability insurance plan for all people living with long-term and chronic disabilities from cradle to grave. I am joined by Catherine McGilvray, who you'll hear later, from a more practical point of view. I will be using the term PWD to describe persons with disabilities, disabled persons, and hope not to offend anyone as both terms are used. We believe the NDIP, which is our plan, is the next big challenge to improve lives in the disability community. We at ECC is not competing for that little piece of pie that is being fought over and divided. We want to see all disability associations, parent groups, caregiver groups, and disabled unite with one voice to support this plan. Such a plan would be needs-based, not based on diagnosis. I've listened to all the fantastic speakers at this conference yesterday and today, and I see individual struggles in all areas, especially when I heard about, or did know, but again, Jordan's principal, the northern communities, Khadija, Alana, Jennifer, Abi. I'm so touched and humbled. It doesn't have to be this way. The financial burden should not be yours. So our purpose today is for you to start thinking and acting, to take the initial first step to join us in the creation of a publicly funded national disability insurance program and address the needs of the most marginalized group in Canada. PWD support in the last item on almost all agendas. Regardless of province or territory, support services for PWD are underfunded and inadequate to task, as evident in long waiting lists. They are inconsistent in application of benefits, inflexibility, and delivery, and are nightmarish to navigate. There are a lack of standards and inadequate data. Australia addressed the problem comprehensively through the creation of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. The impact of this program has been profound and deep, increasing the GDP by 2%, generating employment for PWDs, allowing mainly women to re-enter the workforce or education by paying caregivers, or go fishing, or just be a parent, as I've heard today. So consider, the issue of inadequate support is not widely recognized by the public at large. They think people with disabilities are just fine. The current system is simply not suitable to the task. A new funding model is in order that meets demand and is sustainable and economically beneficial. The plan would be portable across Canada, no matter where you live. Such a model exists in Australia with the NDIS, and we want it here, only better. We can learn from the mistakes. So not long ago, every Canadian Council met with Minister Qualtrough to discuss the way forward in the desire to provide better disability support for Canadians. It was emphasized that if we are to go forward, there would need to be research to get to where we needed to go, as much as it would be efficient to just copy and paste Australia's model. But we can certainly learn from their mistakes and successes. We need to research into the feasibility, viability, and desirability of this plan. It is new. There is no design to the plan, and there is no cost-benefit analysis in place for such a plan in Canada to date. There is no understanding of how federal, provincial, territorial, private insurance interactions would occur under such a plan. These questions need to be answered, so research is the initial first step. This plan could be paid for through simple wage deductions similar to EI or CPP. It would change the discourse surrounding disabilities because the plan will not be seen as welfare, but investment in people for the future. The NDIP was put forward for consideration from 5 Liberal EDA associations just recently. The closure of institutions was one of the greatest social policy changes of the 20th century, but the social and economic segregation that followed was atrocious. Closing doors are one thing. Making fundamental changes to our policies and programs and changing the way we think is another. People with disabilities want to bring about transformation in their lives. Younger disabled people don't want to live in long-term care homes like Jonathan Marchand of Quebec. He's our chairman, who managed to achieve a pilot project to move into his own apartment and manage his own affairs after he caged himself in front of the legislature. Disabled people want their human rights recognized and realized. They want the things that everyone else in the community takes for granted. Disabled people desire change, and they want others in the community to share their vision. Disability voices have become louder, and they now demand a revolution, I would suggest, for their voices to be heard. Australia has provided the model for a better system. It was unanimously supported across all parties. It was supported by 85% of the population in a referendum, and we're 93% of those affected rating the program as very good in a recent poll. So please join us to make this happen. Catherine.
Hi, folks. My name is Catherine. I'll talk as briefly as I can on this, although I'm sure I could probably fill up 3 hours of your time with the amount of experiences I have. But yeah, as was mentioned, I graduated from a university in Australia for physiotherapy back in 2016. And this is when a lot of those programs were being rolled out with the NDIS across the country. And it was just absolutely incredible to be there and see the impact on families. I have also worked in New Zealand, the UK, and Canada. So I've seen kind of quite a broad spectrum of different jurisdictions. And I've been a pediatric physio that whole time. So I've seen, how disabled kids are being supported differently in different areas. So with that, in Australia, it was so cool because like before I started working there, these families had not had physio or, home modifications or easy access to a lot of these services. And I started working at a rural clinic in Western Australia. One story I feel just illustrates this so well. This family lived on a farm and they had a little boy with very complex needs, a rare genetic condition. And they were at that point where they kind of had to consider leaving their farm business because they're 3 hours from Perth and they couldn't access anything they need. And the NDIS rolled out, and all of a sudden, this little guy could get physio at home, working in the little chicken coop on the farm. They had home modifications come in. They had orthotists come, like, drive out to do measurements for splints and things to get made. And it saved this family having to travel 3 hours into Perth to, like, pay money to access all these things when there's already such a big financial burden. And it really turned their life around. It turned their farm around. And this little boy, his quality of life just shot up exponentially, and he could do more things around the farm. It was just like a really incredible thing to watch that, change happen as they got access to all these services for the first time. It's also interesting in Australia, they're funding intensive physiotherapy care. So the kids can go for like longer blocks of daily physio at different points in the year that work for the family, if that's something that they want to do. And it's the only time in my professional experience I've seen kids with cerebral palsy who are a bit older kids move from one GMFCS level to another, which I've just not seen anywhere else in the world. And it's just because they get such amazing amounts of intensive care that they need to work on to achieve certain goals that are meaningful for them. So I guess from that practical point of view, it was just amazing, like working in that kind of a system. And I'd like to compare that to the UK, where it's also totally publicly funded. On the surface level, they get free physio, free OT, free home modifications, and all of that. But instead of that money being put directly into the family's hands to choose where they want to go and access, it's all delivered publicly as well. So that comes with a lot of the inefficiencies that I think we see across Canada, whereas the money gets kind of into this welfare system and then it's allocated to a hospital, and then you're on these wait lists forever and ever. Or from my perspective as a physio, I might see like 16 kids a day and they might not get another physio visit for 3 or 4 months if they're lucky. So I think where Australia did it really well is putting the money into the hands of families. It's all publicly funded, but it just gives the families that power to find what works for them, because everyone's different. Someone might love one OT and then another family might find a different one that suits their child's needs better. And I think we, like, families deserve to have that option, and they should be able to make those choices and not just have, a hospital say, this is the one in your area, so you have to deal with that. So I think that's where Australia did a lot of things right. Obviously, no system's perfect. So we can definitely learn from the mistakes that they've kind of, been working on over the last few years. But I feel so passionately that, kids and people across Canada, doesn't matter if you're, on Vancouver Island or in the middle of Toronto, like, you should be able to access the services you and your family need. And it shouldn't be so fragmented, depending on where you're from. So yeah, I think that's kind of just to, I guess, go into it briefly there, my experience working as a therapist in these systems. And hopefully I can take some of the burden off some shoulders here, because I think you're absolutely right. Like, we need more allies and more healthcare professionals doing this work too.
Wow, thank you. It's really pretty incredible to hear that firsthand experience of it. And it resonates here in Canada and BC, and from what I've heard in Ontario and other provinces, specifically around that therapy piece. we've had a lot of discussions where we realize when parents are funded, then the people that it creates an economy of, you know, smaller businesses of private physiotherapists, and those therapists are able to choose their caseload so that they can give the appropriate support and care instead of being in you know, we have a publicly funded system, but it's underfunded, and therapists aren't paid as well, so they're not attracted to those jobs, and there's just huge burdens and wait lists. It's incredible, and it doesn't work well. Like a system, as we talked about before, needs to work for the therapists and for the families, and be an exchange of buying services, and you have a service to provide. It's really nice to hear how that can work, and how that, because it is a really foundational piece, as we heard earlier, about, with regards to health outcomes, having that therapy support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting too, also to hear about I'd like to hear more about the New Zealand system at some point with you, but we do have a couple more minutes. And I just wanted to maybe ask you a little bit, because it's important to recognize what, I mean, all systems aren't perfect, but I have heard that there were some challenges with the system, and that they're actually working through some adaptations to the program to improve it. And yeah, I'm curious to hear a bit more about those pieces as well.
Yeah, I'm sure Hubert, you can probably chat to this too, but there was some issues, I think, because there's, if I understand all of this correctly, there's basically no caps on what therapists or services could charge families for things. So all of a sudden families have all this, you know, funding to access care. And a lot of businesses and corporations really did take advantage of that. Hubert, I'm not sure if you have any more details on the specifics.
Yeah, just that they are doing a review of the plan right now, just to weed out fraud. There was some, you know, dirty business going on as well, as far as total fraud. Call it something else, wasn't the mafia, but it was along those lines. So they are cleaning it up. You know, I keep saying, when people say, well, yeah, but this is happening and that's happening, I say, yeah, I wish we had that problem here in Canada, that we could actually weed out what wasn't supposed to be there. So, you know what, I'll just, you know, put one quote that, so what we're trying to do sort of next is that, you know, we're looking for the Canadian government to consult with provinces and territories to engage in a public education information sharing campaign that is nonpartisan, inclusive, transparent, and effective. So we sort of have to, like Brenda and I and the other volunteers we have, are not going to be able to bring this to the finish line. You know, in Australia, we'll happy to consult along the way. But I think in Australia, what they managed to do was they got 3 big groups together. So whether that might be, you know, Inclusion Canada or whoever, you know, the government sort of forced them to work together. And that's how it sort of started. There was Bill Shorten who was charged with putting this into play. So they felt it was needed. They felt that the time was right. And he basically said, we have to do this. We're doing this. And Bill Shorten at the time didn't really know much about special needs or, you know, disabilities. But he went across the country. And after doing that, he says, absolutely, we have to do this. So the government forced it, that it had to be done. So we kind of have to get it to that point. You know, everybody has different political affiliations, but, you know, I was at the Liberal Convention last weekend, and that's where we rub the elbows. That's where we talk to the policymakers. We need that in all the provincial governments or all the federal government parties, so that we can push them all to go for the same thing. It truly is, you know, when you heard Catherine speaking, that was a practical example of exactly how this is supposed to work in the end. And it will take everybody getting together to push for something. So if you're talking to a member of parliament, you know, our wish would be that, I heard that the Australian model is really working. We want it here. You know, they get this, they get this, they get this, they get this, and we don't get anything. So the idea is that it comes off your paycheck, everybody's paycheck. goes into a separate held trust fund. When you need it, whether it's at birth or along the way, the funds are there to support your needs. And it really is almost as simple as that. The money is there because it comes off your paycheck, and that worked out, I think, to about $400 a year. So just, to answer that question.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's a holistic program that supports everything from medical equipment, medical supplies, therapy, a care benefit. I understand that's maybe not that easy to get, but that is there. And is there any income support with that program as well? The care benefit.
Yeah, the caregivers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I understand, if you decide to use that program to fund yourself to care for your child, you basically get that as your income. Is that right, Hubert? I think that, yeah.
Yeah. And it includes mental health as well. It was sort of last getting in. It was all sort of physical disabilities, but they did include the mental health issues. And I did hear it from a couple that's in Australia that say it probably should be a little bit more, but it's certainly a lot better than what they were because they weren't getting anything. So now it also includes mental health.
Wonderful. And are there opportunities there to also have, so for families who maybe don't want to manage or can't manage the supports themselves, like the organizing the therapies or respite or those kind of things, is there support as well, like host agencies that you can use for that?
Yeah, you can choose to have it family run or through an agency, and then the agency can deal with all of that for you.
Super important to have those options.
Yeah,
it makes the agencies earn their money, I suppose. I know that there has been some pushback because things will change for agencies. Many agencies get very comfortable, maybe, how they're doing things, and they get the money and then they disperse it. So there will be accountability, and that will be a hurdle to overcome for a lot of agencies. But the competition will be there, and
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We talked before we had this discussion, we talked about the idea that it might be worth planning like a webinar of sorts for maybe an hour or maybe longer to dive deeper into this and learn more. I'm not sure if we landed on a date, possibly, but I did want to encourage anyone here, and we can promote it outside, but encourage you to I think the link is in the chat for Every Canadian Counts, which is the organization in Canada that Hubert and Catherine are part of, and join their newsletter. And we're looking at maybe in June putting together a webinar to look at this a little deeper and learn more. I'm keen to learn more, and I think it sounds like a model worth looking at, definitely, especially since somebody else is doing the hard work of the stumbling blocks and working through those issues for us.
Yeah, if we can get the government, to really pick this up, and the only way we can do that is to pressure the members of parliament. And so each of us need to do that and say there's got to be a better system.
Amazing. Thank you both for the work you're doing and for being here today. And I'll look forward to more discussion and a webinar and look at what we can do to work together.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm, all the presenters and you, Brenda, Amanda, unbelievable. Thank you from the bottom, of our hearts.
Oh, thank you, Herbert. It's been a thing.
Yeah.
All right. I believe now that we had Michael Prince was going to come back and speak with us for a few minutes to do a policy and next steps wrap up, but I don't think he is here. And so I am just going to share a few thoughts. One, I wanted to share my gratitude for everybody who shared their stories, hearing family stories and clinician stories and experiences is really, I think it really helps all of us to understand. I mean, most of us understand the situation in our own provinces, but we don't always get to hear how clinicians see things. We don't always get to hear from researchers, hear their research, what's going on, what they're learning. That's another area where the knowledge translation piece from getting the research into our advocacy, it's always a hard piece, but something else that I know there's a lot of great work to do there. We heard from Dr. Cohen yesterday, and he's done some great research that we want to hear more about. I just want to thank everybody for all the work that's been done to come together today. And oh, it looks like Michael Prince has just joined us, so perhaps I'm going to pass the mic. I'm not sure how much time we have, but we're going to let him do a little wrap up for us. And I just want to thank everybody again. My heart is full, my brain is full, and I think if we're ready to go, I'm going to pass it over to Michael. Perhaps.
Brenda, this is Amanda Fenton just jumping in. Oh, there we go. I think
oh, there we go.
Yeah, Michael's audio just was taking a while to connect.
Thanks so much.
So maybe Brenda, just maybe repeat what you said so Michael can hear your invitation to him.
Oh, sure. Just inviting Michael to step in here and give us a little wrap up. We don't have too long, but a couple minutes to speak to the next steps and what you see as policies that we may be able to impact in the near future. Thanks, Michael.
Hi there.
I think you might be having some technical issues.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back in though.
Okay.
My apologies.
All good. Thanks. We only have a couple minutes, I have to say, but thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Was there something you wanted me to speak to, Brenda, this time? I didn't hear any message.
Oh, sorry. So I can't see my screen at all. Sorry, just wanted to ask you we really only have a couple minutes
Sure.
just to speak into possible, here, we'll give you one thing. What's the
Sure.
one thing that you see as an opportunity right now that we all need to get behind and work together on?
Well, as I spoke yesterday, I've just a really great conference. Thank you very much. Very well run. A lot of power of the voices of families and parents and advocates and allies. I think, with the focus on the federal government has to be the focus. I mean, there's that province by province advocacy and struggle, and even more locally with school boards and local hospitals and caregivers and all that. But if we want to look at the national level, the idea of a caregiver agenda, what I found coming through COVID was there was some additional recognition by the government of Canada about the extraordinary challenges and expenses faced by families for caregiving. Unfortunately, all of those were short-term, temporary benefits. I think we just need to remind the government of Canada and all parliamentarians and the general public, these are not temporary responsibilities. These are not temporary obligations and needs. And so, we've seen a recent introduction of a dental benefit, very popular. I think, the next step is to look at other ways of supporting families. And not simple gimmicks like one-time grocery rebates through the GST. Those are ad hoc, they're one-off. We need meaningful, permanent, sustainable funding and support for families with children with disabilities, no doubt about it. And whether the instant one would be to say to the Minister of Finance, I want to see in the fall economic statement a commitment to doubling the child disability benefit that your party ran on in elections. You have committed to. The waiting is over. That's a quick one. Get that out there. Families need it now. Let's double it. And in the next budget in the spring of 2024, let's see a longer term plan. But in the meantime, families need some recognition and some ongoing support. Let's see that in the fall economic statement. So I would think a campaign directed at the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, with respect, just to push that issue forward hard. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That is a good one to focus on. And I mean, at this point, we've been saying we need to triple it with inflation and the costs since they said that. But I mean, that is a really good one for us to focus on in the short term. Thank you so much for being here today and yesterday. And I am going to pass it back to Amanda.
It's F this time. Amanda F.
Amanda F. I apologize. I'm all over the place now.
No, please don't apologize. We keep you on your toes having two Amandas on the team. Hi, everyone. This is Amanda F. speaking. I just wanted to take a moment to reshare that Menti link in the Zoom chat, this conversation that we've heard, these different segments around what's working in other places, in different ways that it's working, but also to really hear from you around what are some of the potential policy innovations, solutions, hopes and dreams that you hope for. You know, if Brenda were to ask all of you that question, like what's the one thing that you would really like to see? We also really want to welcome your voices in there. As well as some like, oh, you know, this was very cool to hear about this, what's working somewhere else, but here's a concern around that. So just also the opportunity to provide that insight in as well. So I've just popped that Menti link in the Zoom chat one more time for you. If Menti isn't your jam, doesn't work super well for you, the Zoom chat is also a beautiful place. We'll make sure we just pull all of this together. You know, we often say in our work, we're not planning a meeting, we're planning a harvest. These are the seeds that we're planting. These are the fruits that we are picking together to carry us forward, to ripple out. So with that, one of the other ways to help what happened over the course of these 2 days to travel is the work that Kelly has been doing, Chia Tumka, over in the Zoom window there. And so I'll just invite Kelly in, who is on the spot doing just, Kelly, I love you so much. Thank you for being with us in all of the ways that you show up. And I wonder if you want to take a few minutes to give us some reflections on today. What's on the chart and under the chart, maybe.
On the chart and in my heart. Thank you so much. It's what you say in my language, and it means you have done me a tremendous honor. And I can't think of anywhere that I would rather be to lift up and honor the work and words right now. So we started, and I think this is so important. When we are equity seeking folks, our joy is the resistance, and any way we can claim it. So thank you for the start in music. And one of the things that was kind of said or sentiments is there's always room for silly and joy and music, and just like making sure that we get fueled up by that to keep going in this advocacy work, to notice the everyday miracles present in our lives and in our children. And I know that that's the fuel that sustains the kinds of efforts that we need to be making just in the everyday life and in this bigger advocacy picture for those of us who have the privilege and the voice and the ability to do this work. And so earlier I talked about just the sentiment that there's often a barrier in everything and everywhere we go to just get out the door. And so many things from, advocacy and activism to racism and language barriers, accessibility, all those things. But the important part of that for me is saying none of these things are deficits. They are just really the superpowers of each and every one of you showing up every single day for your kids and for your families, and doing this work of deep witnessing, which is what graphic recording is. I see you, and I just really want that to come across. In learning from families, so many pieces here around the way that we, currently it sounds like we hold each other more than we're held by systems. And so thank you for the way disability, community, and family, and charities, and all these other kinds of informal networks and leadership come forward to fill gaps. So some of the things that came up in families is no daycare. How do we work and survive when daycares do not have the training, the facilities for the kind of inclusion that we need? That's the rights of these children, these exceptional children. The way that processes, and I've really gone through this and continue to, the way that processes to get access and support and diagnosis are so deficit focused. Like you have to continually give yourself PTSD almost to fill out forms over and over, or tell a story over and over of like the worst of your child. And it's soul sucking. It absolutely is. The access to support for travel costs and how much there are barriers to paying that out of pocket, and just the stress of leaving home, accessible housing and vehicles, and how impossible it is to just find that, but afford it. Families that have to move, have to completely uproot to receive the healthcare required, and then often also face barriers of racism and discrimination, kind of outweighing much of what could be positive of their experience in healthcare. And we talked about like the gaps that are filled, but other kinds of service organizations and charities. And that the conversation later on expanded that these are rights and medical needs, but also, and education and health needs and social needs. So and that, we need to look at the whole person. We have community here, but a whole person approach and paving over these cracks is part of this work of coming together, of working in a collective liberation kind of framework. And so we came to the next piece around disability and health related supports. And this really struck me. It's like so simple, but I find people aren't listened to or heard, is listen to families who need more money and more flexibility. Working together to build critical mass. I mean, that seems to be the soil that's being tilled at the moment, is just like, the integration and lifting up of voices and common experience. The way that financial supports or lack of and struggle affect the whole person. So mental health and well-being, the cost that no one thinks about, that just assumptions of what's covered. The healthcare myths of what's covered, I think it was said, costs for renovations, for accessibility, for time to fill out forms and applications, in the way that takes away joy and leisure and work time and just time to be present with your child. When a healthcare team is able to coordinate, so this just like human coordination seems like a big theme here. When they're able to travel and coordinate to a rural community to serve a family, it is life-changing just to take away a few steps in a day or in a moment. And we have here just like the paid family for healthcare aids and supports, and just the way that so much unrecognized and unpaid caregiving is keeping systems and families and humans afloat. And then this big piece around care work as paid work. It really is, which brings us into magic, the magic of possibility and just that hopeful space. It's like, that's the other thing that keeps us going, is a commitment to, we know there's better, and we're committed to better. And we're not just committed to better for ourselves, but for everybody, for all families, pulling the good things across the country for all families. We heard the story of creating the new supplement in Quebec and some of the factors that were helping that happen. It's like the connecting motivated mothers of exceptional children. Again, it's just these superhuman folks they empowered people to tell their story. They were meeting with MPs and lobbying. They were encouraging other parents to speak up and tell their stories. And so some of what that was spoken about that sort of lifted it all up and made it happen was working together, was a deep sense of purpose, a very loose organizational structure. There wasn't a lot of hierarchy. There wasn't ego, a lot of space for truth telling, and just ongoing, like very, very committed and tenacious of those mothers. Some of the magic is needing healthcare professionals as allies and advocates in the system. And I heard that in the last presentation, to create a system that works for all. So for both the families and the people, the therapists and all those people in the system that provide service. There's something in there when it works well for everybody, it works well for families. And so this was just about, we ended with these presentations around a public insurance plan that is needs-based, consistent, creates standards, and is based on something that is more adequate in a way that we can consider it an investment in all people for the future. And it can only be done together. And these bigger, right now in front of us, policy needs to continue to lobby and advocate a commitment to double, and I heard triple child disability benefit, and seeing a long-term commitment and stability within the federal government to keep going. So that was a lot, and a tip of my hat to all of you for being here on a Saturday, and just like being here in your life and the gifts that you are. Thank you. Choo, kleko, kleko.
Choo, Kelly, kleko, kleko. Thank you so much. And just to share, I know you can't monitor the chat, but there was just some beautiful love and appreciations arriving in the chat for your work, your visuals, and also just the lens and heart that you bring to this work. Thank you so much. I am going to pass it back over to Amanda Lockitch, who is going to help us close in such a juicy way.
Thank you. Thank you. And Kelly, I've actually never witnessed graphic recording before, and now I want it as part of my daily life. It's gorgeous. You're such a beautiful artist, and the way that you have really synthesized and so succinctly captured such a big heart of what this conference has been is remarkable. I mean, it is such a gorgeous art form. So thank you for sharing that with us. We really have reached the end of this conference. It's kind of hard to believe. So thank you for joining us in this national discussion on childhood disability, family poverty, health outcomes. And you may be asking yourself, what's next? How can we keep in touch? What can I do to instigate change? And all I can say is, I'm so glad you've asked. Because first of all, you can go to the Take Action button on the Disability Without Poverty website that will be in the chat. There you can share your story. Somebody was asking questions about that this morning. We'd be happy to help you get your story out if that's something that you would like to do. You can also find the digital toolkit for the Budget the Benefit postcard campaign as part of our push for the Canada Disability Benefit. I'm happy to share more information about that campaign if you'd like to reach out to me. I think my email is in the chat as well. You can sign up to receive our newsletter, and that will keep you up to date on all of our activities. Also, if you'd like to be part of a working group that's looking to influence policy changes, we will put a JOT form in the chat box. So fill that out and we will certainly be in touch. We had such an amazing array of backgrounds here over the last 2 days, and it would be mind-boggling to be able to get different people from different sectors to all want to work together. As Michael said, to work, on a large picture federal initiative to keep working together despite where we live nationally. Please feel free to email again at alockitch@plan.ca. If you have been inspired in any way to write an op-ed or a blog post, and you want some facilitation with that, again, we are happy to facilitate that for you. And Brenda and I really just once again want to thank all of the speakers, the creators, the behind the scenes help, the sponsors, the organizations, the parents, the guests, our translators and captioners, for making this a truly first of its kind conversation that we hope can lead to many more of these conversations. So I'd like to say thank you. Are we really ending early? Wow. We're too efficient, I think. Brenda, I'm not sure if you wanted to say any last words, or if we should just have Amanda cue some music and play us.
Sure, I could say a couple words. I just really, thank you to all the sponsors and everybody who's worked with us. I mean, it literally started a year ago. I can't believe how much work it is to put on a conference. And, I see Dr. Olaf is still here, and I so much appreciate that you took the time to believe in us and have a chat. And you spent a lot of time here this week, over this 2 days, which is really appreciated. I know it's your time, and you've shared it with us and been here to listen, which is appreciated. And so many of you, parents and professionals, and who have just, I see Dr. Prince is still here as well. I appreciate you spending time listening and being here, and believing in us to put this together. And as Amanda said earlier in the conference, the process of putting this together has brought people together, which has been incredible. What we do next, we're not 100% sure, but we do want to get people together and have more conversation and see if we can make some recommendations to impact policy. And we know how huge the need is, how important it is. And I feel very full of hope right now and gratitude for everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to put a special shout out to both the Amandas, actually, who I just unreal. Thank you for being a part of this, and incredible. And the tech team as well. There's so many people. Thank you so much.
I think on that note, we are just going to leave. Maybe people have booked off until 1 o'clock, and this gets you a few minutes of grace before the rest of your life has to pick up and move on. So Amanda, would you be able to play some of your fine music? And thank you for being.
This is John Batiste's song, I Need You, because we all need each other. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Saxophone, buck jumping down on a boulevard. I couldn't wait to blow my own horn. It ain't wrong for you to play along, playing this song till you die. Come on, come on. In this world with a lot of problems, all we need is a little love. Thank you, oh you make me thank you for your love. We done a lot of living, we working overtime. Don't need another million, you got that gold mine. I love the way you live it, 'cause you're so genuine. You got that something special, didn't you know? I just need you, you.
I just wanted to add huge thanks to all the accessibility team as well. I forgot to say that. Thank you. Amazing work. So appreciated.